the concessions from last week, and indeed despite their massive majority. I spoke to a few Labour MPs after the vote, after the government won the vote. Josh Fenton Glynn was one who was very much on the fence, felt like he was going to vote against the government. He changed his mind, and I asked him what exact moment he changed his mind.
As the day progressed, and as it was clear that the government were listening, they wanted to properly co-produce with disabled people's organisations, and they wouldn't be making a change to the 4 points on PIP, it made it really clear that, we're actually going to get a system that will hopefully protect disabled people, will listen to them and make sure disabled people's organisations are central to any changes we make.
Others MPs, though, Ben, did not change their mind, like left-wing Labour MP Richard Bergen.
Labour MPs have been treated like mugs. They've been asked to vote for a bill as it stands, unamended, because the government didn't want they wanted to save political face. This shouldn't be about saving political face. This should be about getting it right for disabled people out there.
Now, lots of people tonight, lots of Labour MPs basically saying they've just gutted their own bill. It's extraordinary. There's sort of nothing really left in it. Speaking to one minister after the vote tonight who suggested a post-mortem was inevitable, and they said they just failed, the government failed to actually make the argument for this. There's only a few days left until the third reading next Wednesday, so I'm sure we can expect the rows to very much go on then.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Gregor Poynton about all this. Gregor, the Labour MP for Livingston, who voted for the government's plans tonight. Gregor, good to have you with us. What made you decide to back Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall on this? Evening.
Evening, how are you doing? Well, from the start, I've seen the bill with three principles. First is to help people, help people that can work into work, people that are able but perhaps need a bit of additional support to get into work, and there's a whole series of measures around that, but also to protect those who clearly can't work and give the dignity and support they need. And I've seen that as a sort of twin-track approach, is to support people into work, but also to support those that can.
The government's own estimates suggest that these changes were going to push 150,000 people into poverty, didn't they?
So I've seen a number of figures on that. I think that it haven't been scored with the new plans, which I think have been. I think it's been a good process to get to a better package, actually.
But there's nothing in the package, as Aggie was just describing, that all the major changes they wanted to make, they've had to either ditch or delay. So what have you actually voted for?
Yeah, from the very start, we've known that there's going to be more people on PIP at the end of the Parliament than there was at the start, more money spent on welfare than there was at the start, but there needs to be work done to make it much more sustainable. So the Timms Review is going to look at the criteria for PIP, for new people coming on to PIP, to make sure we get that right.
But on that, this is a key point, because that was the major concession that was made this afternoon. The criteria for PIP payments won't be changed until after the review has been carried out. Why on earth was that a last-minute concession? What is the point of having a review into a change that the government was trying to make before the review even started?
I think that makes sense. I think it was the right decision to change the time in that way. So it was timed that the changes for the criteria would come in after the review.
But yes, but it seems a blindingly obvious thing to do that should have happened weeks ago.
Well, I think that was part of the process of scrutinising from Labour backbenchers. I mean, that is our job, is to look at a bill and to go through it line by line, because changing welfare is incredibly complex, and we need to get it right for people, because these are people's individual lives. So I think it's really important that process has happened. Labour backbenchers have got a better package alongside working with the government.
But what does it say about the government that they came forward with such a half, and this is the language that many of your colleagues are using, such a poor half-baked plan in the first place?
Well, I don't accept that is the case. I think the thrust of the bill is right. It's about getting people into work.
So why is they gutted?
Well, because they've made changes and we've worked through the detail to get it right. And I think that's the process that's been gone through over
But all the cuts they were trying to make, all the cuts that they were insisting were absolutely necessary for the sake of economic stability and all the rest of it, they're now possibly not making. So they're not actually doing. The government's not actually doing any of the things that it's trying to do.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's about putting welfare on a much more sustainable footing and a more sensible way of looking at the criteria to getting that criteria for PIP right. It's not been reviewed for a long time. I think it's important to get that right. So I think I would start more from the values perspective of it's about how do we get people into work. So there's money going into training, there's money going into work coaches to support people who can't work or can work but perhaps need a bit of additional support into work. but then also support those who can. And I think that to me was the place we should start with that.
So
it's a value.
You're comfortable with the way that this has been handled from start to finish? You think it's been handled competently?
Well, I think it is the backbenchers' jobs to scrutinise and improve legislation, and I think it's government's job to listen to that and get to that place.
But do you think that the government has handled this issue competently?
Well, I think ultimately we've got to the right place this evening. So
that was with respect, that wasn't the question. Do you think the process, the management of this from Downing Street, from the Treasury, from the Department for Work and Pensions, do you think it screams competence?
Well, I think they did listen, and they've come to a good place. So I think that, to me,
it's notable that you're not willing to describe your colleagues' actions during this period as competent.
Well, I think the people in charge are competent and are doing a good job. But I think that ultimately it's about the backbenchers and ministers coming together. Have
they done a good job specifically in trying to bring these changes through?
Well, I'm comfortable with the package of where we've ended up this evening and voting for.
But again, that wasn't what I asked you. Have they done a good job throughout the handling of this process? Because the reason I'm asking that, Greg, you know, a lot of your colleagues will say, and some have said publicly, that the answer to that is no. You had one of your colleagues on the show last night saying it's false.
Well, the conversations I've been able to speak to Stephen Timms, I've been able to speak to PBSs and DOP and others about the issues that I had with the bill as it was progressing, and I never had anything other than competent, positive interactions with them, so I can only speak for
But
those.
do you not worry that over the course of this, from start to finish, the U-turns, the flip-flops, the concessions, the fact that they're on course to lose a vote, do you not worry that the government right now looks completely and utterly incompetent?
I don't think that's the case, no.
And you're not concerned about it? Because a lot of people, including a lot of your own colleagues, are saying that's exactly the impression that's been given.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think we've ended up with a good package which has been voted through today. There'll be more work to be done to get the line-by-line amendments correct before we go to third reading, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Gregor, for coming on and talking to us. Gregor Poynton, Labour MP for Livingston, who voted for the bill and didn't sign that recent amendment, as it's called, calling for no changes to be dropped completely. I mean, you know where I've been on this from the start. I've been against these changes. I think they're a mistake. I think they've got a lot to do. I think making disabled people's lives harder is not something any government, let alone a Labour government, should be doing. Put that to one side, though. And I just think you cannot get away from the fact, the reality, that the political handling of this, whether it's the Treasury or whether it's Downing Street or whether it's both, or whether it's the Department of Pensions, has been about as shambolic an exercise in trying to change the law as I've seen in a very, very long time. And I wonder what you make of it. I wonder if you think I'm being fair there, that this has been, as I called it, a case study in how not to run a country, specifically these changes I'm talking about, or whether you think, look, the government, as Greg was saying, the government tried to do something, it listened, it tweaked, it changed, and that's something we should applaud, that it got there in the end. Maybe you give ministers credit for even trying to cut the welfare bill in a way that others weren't bold enough to do. I don't know. Tell me what you make of it. 0345 6060 973. And how, if it's changed, how it's changed your perception of the people running the country right now. Really interested in your thoughts on that. You might want to talk to me specifically about the changes they were trying to make. Maybe you're one of those that stood to be affected and was set to lose out by those cuts and those changes. Or maybe you just want to talk to me about the politics. If you voted Labour, do you have concerns about how this has been handled? That number once more, 0345 6060 973. Ben Kentish here on LBC. Straight to your calls after this, 10:15.
This is LBC.
Save this summer with Lidl Plus. Get 2 for £7 on burgers, jumbo sausages and more. And get 2 for £3.50 on our plant burgers, veggie sausages and more veggie classics. Download Lidl Plus and start saving this summer today.
18 plus GB only while stocks last. Terms apply. See lidl.co.uk/LBTV. Offer ends 27th of August.
Summertime is get-together time. And just imagine the get-togethers you could have if you win big with Lotto. Because the Lotto £15 million jackpot must be won this Saturday. Don't forget to play. Get your ticket today. Lotto from the National Lottery. Prizes rounded down to the nearest £1. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
At Halfords, we want you to say yes to packing more into summer days with a great value roof box or bike rack. Say yes to freewheeling fun with bikes and gear for all the family. Say yes to a perfectly polished car with our range of car cleaning products. And say yes to easy breezy trips with a free aircon check. Our experts are on hand with checks, advice and fitting. So pop into your local store or shop online and say yes to summer at Halfords. Subject to availability, see halfords.com for full T's and C's.
A southern trade is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep for a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I'm tempting this. I can't believe you're getting in touch saying you're being unfair on the Labour Party. You know, stop bashing the Labour. I'm not being party political here in any way. I just want competent leaders. I want good, competent, effective government. And I think specifically on this, I'm not talking more broadly, but specifically on the handling of this issue, I think it's been anything but competent, anything but efficient. I think it's been a farce. And that's not just my view. I was talking to some Labour Party government advisors tonight. I was talking to Labour MPs tonight. And they were just absolutely completely at their wits' end to explain how the people at the top of the government had got this one so badly. One of them said to me, this isn't something we needed to do. How much authority, how much goodwill have we squandered and what for? And that really, for me, is the key question. What do you make of it? Does it change your view on the Labour government? Are you glad that they've sort of backtracked in the end? Or are you more on the side of thinking, well, they should never have been trying to slash disability in the first place? That's not the Labour government, maybe, that you voted for. 0345 6060 973. The number, as always, to get in touch tonight. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Let's talk first to Robin in Whitehaven this evening. Hi, Robin.
Hello. Yeah, I think this is one of the most embarrassing things I've seen in politics for a long time. I think we're in the Liz Truss territory with all this carry on.
It's not that bad, is it?
I think it is. I think it could be worse. They've literally
worse than Liz Truss.
They've brought a bill that has had everything pulled out of it. So it's basically a bill saying we'll wait till the end of next year to look at a review. I don't understand why they didn't just pull the full bill. It's very embarrassing. Now, someone's got to carry the can for this. It's either Starmer, Liz Kendall, who I think should probably be the one who takes the blame for it. But then we've got Sir Flip-Flop, who's flip-flopped how many times, I'm losing count, the winter fuel allowance, the inquiry into the grooming gangs. You know what I mean? It's either Kendall, Reeves and Starmer, or all three of them have got to carry the can for this. This is embarrassing.
When you say carry the can, Robert, I mean, do you mean heads need to roll it?
Absolutely, heads have got to roll, you know what I mean? The government, we're 1 year into a government who started bad and they're getting worse.
They're getting worse?
I think they're getting worse, yeah. This is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen from the Labour government. This bill is basically wasted parliamentary time. How much time has gone into this? And this was no secret that this bill was going to come up against opposition, so the Starmer had his head buried in the sand. You know what I mean? What his advisors do, it's been no secret.
Someone said to me tonight, Robin, just on that, Downing Street didn't foresee how contentious this would be. And I looked at that person and I said, they didn't foresee that a Labour government trying to slash disabled people's benefits would be controversial. I mean, you don't need a sort of masters in political science to work out that that's not going to go down very well with Labour backbenchers, do you? And yet, they seem to have somehow failed to predict it.
That makes it even more shocking. Absolutely. I was watching the TV and Liz Kendall come on, and she was trying to, I don't know what she was doing, trying to bluff her way out of how bad it was, basically. And this is, but I've come to expect nothing else from all the flip-flops, you know what I mean?
What did you make a greater point in there saying, look, this is the good government. This is the government tables a plan, backbenchers improve it, the government listens and backtracks, and that's how government should work. What did you make of that claim?
Well, I think that's clutching at straws. That's desperation. You know what I mean? At the 12th hour, never mind the 11th hour, when they know that defeat is basically upon them, they seem, rage ridiculous. Why didn't they just pull the bill and say we're going to look at this again?
And it's small things as well, isn't it? It's Rachel Reeves going out, what was it, a week ago, and saying we will not be U-turning on this. When she must have known that there was at least a risk that is exactly what they were going to do. So why say that they won't? It's just small things like that, and every single stage they've shot themselves in the foot.
I don't know whether it's arrogance with them. I have no idea what's going on. I think Stanley's the wrong man for the job. I think what political commentators should be saying now and asking who is going to replace Keith Stanley.
Really?
Because
I think he's the problem.
I think he's the problem. I seriously think he is the problem.
Thank you very much. Good to talk to you this evening. Let's go to Ben in Bristol. Hi, Ben.
I've been following cases at State periodically before. I'm on PEP and I'm working. So that might surprise people. I thought government has tried to conflate disabled people who are non-working and the people who are working. But, so deliberately doing that, bringing in the two issues. But, as you say, certainly incompetence. As we did before, I think it's total arrogance by the people around the Starmer, Kendall, and to the Treasury.
Ben, your line's dropping out slightly.
Sorry.
Your line's dropping out slightly. We'll see if we can sort of weather it.
Yeah. Okay then. So as for today, as for today, I think it's a school goal. As in football terms.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, right, we'll take this away. But the MPs couldn't even see the legislation for the amendments, for the supposed amendments. And this goes back to the Labour Party. I used to be a shop steward. I used to vote for the Labour Party. Not strong, hard left wing, just traditional Labour. Okay? Any shop steward with their soul would never sign like an agreement without seeing the text.
Absolutely. And what baffles me is the fact that they were forced to concede that the changes they were trying to make should only come after the review into those very changes rather than before, because what the government wanted to do was say, OK, we're going to tighten the criteria for who can apply for these benefits, and then we'll have a review into the criteria for who should apply to the benefits. And Labour backbenchers said, what's the point of a review if you've already preempted the outcome and the findings of that review? And the government said, no, we've got to change it now, and then we'll have a review. And the Labour backbenchers said, that's ridiculous. And then the concession came at the last hour, at the last minute. They are now only going to make those changes after a review, which you might think is exactly how it should have been in the first place. Ben, thank you. Leave it just because your line's a bit crackly, but thank you for calling in tonight. John's in Leicester on this. I mean, John, am I being a bit unfair on the Labour government here?
Yes and no. But as far as I'm concerned, the Labour government, it's okay being in opposition and saying, well, don't do this, don't do that. And all of a sudden, your hand's on the tiller and you're running the public purse. And they are seeing the mess, honestly, that is, that we are as a country, and the numbers that are crunching, and the amount of debt we are racking up, and the 110 billion we are paying just in interest to service the loan, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and this is just not sustainable then. Now look, we should, as a country, always support those that genuinely need and are the most vulnerable, should always be looked after, those that can't work. But I'm afraid, we've got to call it out and say it is. There's 1,000 people per day claiming new applicants. This is not sustainable. Now, I know that COVID is the fallout from that, but what we are seeing in the UK is not happening anywhere else in Europe, amongst other comparable countries.
So, John, do you think that even if the handling hasn't been quite right, you'd say they deserve credit for even trying to kind of address this in the first place?
I don't care who was in power, Tories, Reform, Labour, this is something that has got to be tackled, because this is taking the country under. I'm telling you, it is not sustainable. Now, I'm not saying that, most governments should not look after that. We should always look after that. But there's just, I'm afraid this tsunami of young people saying, just claiming online, just answering 3 questions, saying, yeah, I've got this, I can't do that.
It's not that easy. Well, I take the point you're making. But given... go on. Sorry. I was just saying, given what you're saying, that, you think the government really should have done more to crack down on the benefit bill. Are you disappointed that they didn't push ahead? That they did cave to the rebels?
I am, and I understand, the fallout. I mean, everything that, Army colours to a mast. I've always been more blue than red, but I'm leaning reform now. That's just the way I'm going, like a lot of people. Right, that's political where I am. But this is just an issue that is got to be faced,
but they're not facing it. They've kicked the can down the road.
They are. That's right.
So they've upset everyone. They've upset the people who are saying this is outrageous, and then they've also upset people like yourself who say no, it's something that needs to be done. So they've alienated everybody.
They're worried about the seats and what people back, within their constituency will say. I get that, and that's the tragic short-termism of our politics. Everyone's just looking for the next vote and the next election.
Aren't they also worried about the impact on some very vulnerable people? I mean, the government's own estimates said that these changes, if they'd gone ahead, would have pushed 150,000 people into poverty. Yeah, and the government wanted to do it.
But amongst this is the baby with the bathwater that you'll always get. There are people that will genuinely suffer.
About 150,000 people.
Oh no! Right, okay, that's a wrong phrase of term. There's a lot of people, Ben, swinging the lead.
There are, of course there are, and that's got to stop. And I agree with John. The bill's got to come down, but it's about how you do it. It's about whether you just take the axe and swing it left, right, and centre, or whether you do it properly and say, well, actually, how do we do this sustainably and without harming really vulnerable people? And that's not, as I see it, the way the government went about it. John, thank you. Lovely to talk to you this evening. Sarah's in lovely Snowdonia in North Wales. Hi, Sarah.
Oh, hello so much, but thank you so much for taking my call. I am a multiply disabled person. I have a farm in Snowdonia, and I don't have any other thing apart from PIP. I have a private pension, which is a principal sum of £1,000 a month, and I have PIP, which helps me to get in and out of shops because my village has no shop or anything, so I have to go to the nearest town, which is 5 miles away, and then I have to get food and things to come home. So I'm actually, totally, I'm on about £1,400 a month.
And you rely on those PIP payments to live on?
Of course I do.
Were you worried that when these changes were announced, were you worried that you might be one of those that missed out and had those taken away?
Well, of course. I'm at the stage because I've got arthritis in my knees and back that they've offered, the council, bless them, have offered me a hoist to get me into the bath and so forth because I'm quite badly disabled now.
I can tell, sir. So what do you make of Labour? Not just trying to make the changes they were making, but also some of the language about cutting people's benefits to get them back into work and so on. Tell me what you make of it.
Well, I'm 60 years old. I spent over a quarter of a century being a senior lecturer in science. I paid a higher rate of tax for quite a long time. Yes. Then, during COVID, I took voluntary redundancy and came here. Bought the farm, as they say.
So, Sarah, tell me what you make of how the Labour government has gone about this process.
It's a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Luckily, I live where there's Savile Roberts is the MP.
She's Plaid Cymru.
She's Plaid Cymru, and I vote for Plaid Cymru, even though I'm not born Welsh, I identify as Welsh.
Would this put you off voting Labour in future?
I'll never vote Labour again. Well, I never voted Labour again after Tony Blair took away.
Okay, Sarah, appreciate the call. Thank you very much indeed. Wish you well. Sarah in Snowdonia. Still to come.
People are people, and we have a welfare system, and these people should live in dignity and should not feel that they're a burden, and it's a matter of choice where we spend our money.
We've talked about the politics of this. Let's talk about the personal element. The government has passed its welfare plans to the House of Commons. What will it mean for people who claim personal independence payments, or who might need to in the future, which of course could include any of us? We'll talk to a disability rights spokesperson just after the news headlines at 10:31 with Matt Hewitt.
The government's welfare reform bill has passed its first Commons hurdle. MPs have voted it through with a majority of 75. Ministers were forced to offer a further concession to rebel Labour MPs with just an hour to go. PIP reforms will now not take place until after a review at the end of next year. A man's in court tomorrow charged with the murder of a pregnant woman in Northern Ireland. Sarah Montgomery, who had 2 children, died in her home in Donaghadee in County Down on Saturday. And the jury in the trial of the rapper Sean Diddy Combs has reached a verdict on 4 counts. These include charges relating to sex trafficking and prostitution. Diddy denies all allegations against him. LBC weather, showers in the north tonight, drier elsewhere with lows of 8 to 20 degrees. Finally feeling a bit fresher tomorrow with highs of 25.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Coming up tomorrow morning with Nick Ferrari at breakfast, Nick will speak to one of the Labour MPs that rebelled against the government as Sir Keir Starmer's welfare plan passes through the House of Commons following last-minute concessions. Plus, 3 bosses are arrested at the hospital Lucy Letby worked at on suspicion of manslaughter. Nick will have the latest. And migrant channel crossings hit a record high 20,000 in 6 months. Nick will take your calls on that. All that and more coming up. Nick Ferrari at breakfast tomorrow morning from 7 o'clock here on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
I know what I like to invest in. That's why I choose eToro. With over 7,000 assets, I can invest in big global British stocks. Wait, what? Big global British stocks. Big global stocks. Trade everything from local brands to global giants. Yep, all in one app. eToro. Join today. eToro is a multi-asset investment platform. The value of your investments may go up or down. Your capital is at risk.
People of Britain love their ice baths. They've bought loads of them. With the Barclaycard Platinum, they could also save with 0% interest for up to 24 months on purchases, which is a nice, warm feeling. What you buy is your business. Helping you pay less interest is ours. Subject to financial status, T's and C's and exclusions apply. Check if you're eligible at barclaycard.co.uk. Representative example, 24.9% APR representative variable and 24.9% purchase rate per annum based on a £1,200 credit limit.
Big, big, big motoring world. Wow, motoring world.
Yes, that's right. Big Motoring World is also Wow Motoring World because we price check our cars every day to guarantee you our best price, with up to 95% of them below market value. Big Motoring World. We're big on what matters to you. See website for nearest store. Visit bigmotoringworld.co.uk or one of our stores for our price promise and terms and conditions.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Come back to your calls on the politics of the government's handling of its attempts to cut welfare benefits in just a moment. First, though, important not to lose sight of the fact, isn't it, that at the heart of this are a lot of vulnerable people who have been very afraid that this might affect them. Let's talk about where we are at tonight following those last-minute concessions from the government. Dan White is a spokesperson for Disability Rights UK, whose daughter is disabled. Dan, good to have you on the programme with us tonight. Are you reassured by the compromises and the concessions that the government has made today?
The RUK and personally, no, we are not reassured at all. I mean, concessions, yes, but any changes now will only apparently take place after Stephen Timms has reported the findings of his review into the system, due to conclude in autumn 2026. which he assures us will include the voices of disabled people's organisations such as us. But all we can say is we can assure the Minister our voices and recommendations will be to scrap the bill, but unfortunately we can't see that happening or being taken into the equation. So we just literally feel, even though we've had another concession which makes the government's position look even weaker, that we're just not actually going to progress anywhere on this bill at all.
What do you make of how this has been managed down over the last few months, and how much distress and fear has been caused by the handling of it?
I can give you a good example of that, a very personal one. I was at the demonstration outside the House of Commons all day with vast members of the disabled community, and I came home to my daughter Emily, who is 19 and who is now on PIP, and apparently under these new rules she will be protected, money will not go down, and she was actually in tears about this, not for herself, but for her friends at the college that she goes to. She goes to predominantly all wheelchair user college. Trying to explain to her that obviously she will be protected, apparently, but those who are coming up under her, say 14 or 15, who after November 2026, should this bill go ahead, even though they could have exactly the same disabilities as her, will be receiving less money. And obviously, as you can see, it will just create a two-tier system, which for those young people will just leave them plainly humiliated, absolutely humiliated.
The cost of incapacity benefits has rocketed, and it's continuing to rocket. That's why the government says some action is needed. Even if you think they've gone about this in the wrong way, Dan, would you accept that?
Well, obviously, the benefits bill will increase, but you need to look at why the benefits bill is increasing. It's the way we're increasing. We just came out of program to say that it's affected the mental health of a lot of people. We're not saying that we're not saying that the welfare system needs to be looked at, but it needs to be looked at in cooperation with disabled people's organisations.
That's what's now going to happen. This review, the review by Stephen Timms, the Disabilities Minister, that is what the government has finally agreed to do. That it will look at the criteria. Yes,
finally agreed to do now. So we won that concession, but we just know from previous experience of dealing with government departments, especially on policy and campaigning, that very little will change. Voices will be heard, but when it comes to the very last day of action, things will be disregarded and government policy will continue.
So you might be heard, but you won't be listened to.
Exactly. My dad used to say it best, if I may say so, when my policy work. He said, "Son, it must be like trying to nail a tomato to a wall." And he's absolutely right, but we will continue to fight on and do what's right for the same people rights.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dan White, spokesperson for Disability Rights UK. 10:38 at the time. Listen to Ben Kentish here on LBC, where we are picking over the government's handle of this issue. Whether you think they were right to try and cut disability benefits in the first place, as John was saying, look, give them credit for that, or whether you think really the main takeaway from all of this is the handling of it has, as I think it has been, completely and utterly farcical. Mo's a new caller in Barnet this evening. Mo, welcome.
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hi. I think what the issue is not that people with disabilities, not that less people with disabilities should be getting it. There's people that don't deserve it. People without disabilities should stop getting it. See, I applied for PIP a good few years ago, and there's two sections to PIP. There's the daily living allowance and there's the mobility allowance.
Yeah.
I only applied for the daily living because I have no problem with my mobility, and I got a call from the lady looking at my application at the time where I would receive the PIP, and she told me that she wanted to add something to my application. She added stuff, and that gave me the highest rate of the mobility allowance.
Right. What did she add?
I couldn't tell you, but she added something that gave me. I didn't put a word on the mobility section, and
so what? You're saying that you were being given more money than you needed?
Yeah. So they literally, whoever it was wrote stuff down on this application that was just they made up, which gave me the money.
Well, it was completely fictitious.
Completely.
Gosh, that must be pretty rare.
Who knows? Genuinely, who knows? I mean, if I, with no mobility problems, can get the highest rate of mobility allowance, then who's to say that hundreds of other people are getting that?
So then, Mo, do you think we need to be giving the government more credit for at least trying to tackle this problem?
You've got to give them credit, but at the same time, making it harder for people to receive the allowance that might actually make people that need it not get it. So it sort of goes both ways. Yes, I think with what they're doing, it may help. It may help the amount of people that shouldn't be getting it to stop getting it. But at the same time, people who should be getting it might find it really hard to receive it.
And that's the worry, isn't it? And that's why so many Labour backbenchers said, actually, this is not something we are going to support. Thank you, Merck. Lovely to talk to you. We'll speak again soon. Let's go to Gateshead this evening and talk to Simon. Simon, what do you make of how the government's handled this one? Evening.
Good evening, Ben. Lovely to speak to you. Thank you. I think we should cut Keir Starmer a bit of slack. He's a thoroughly decent person. He's trying to do what's best for the country. He sees the welfare bill as unsustainable. He has to do something about it. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, there's lots of opposition. But this is a man in a difficult position. He's volunteered to help us to steer the country out of the mess left by the Conservatives. And we should be rooting for him. We should be on his side.
Why should disabled people be asked to foot the bill for cleaning up the mess?
Well, they're not being asked to foot the bill to clean up the mess. It's just that part of the welfare budget has become so inflated that something has to be done. That's where the increase has been.
Yes, but there are other. If the government wants to cut spending, there are other areas that it could cut instead. It doesn't have to try to balance the books on the backs of some very ill, some very sick, and some very vulnerable people, and that's what this government was trying to do.
Yes.
And I don't think that is trying to clean up the mess. I think that is a cowardly way out, a cowardly way to try and find some cash, because it's an easy option. It's the low-hanging fruit. I'll just go after the disabled again. There's all sorts of ways the government could try and improve this fiscal or the financial situation that we are in. Why did they have to pick, firstly, pensioners, and secondly, sick and disabled people to go after?
It's very interesting you call it the low-hanging fruit. I mean, have you seen how much opposition Keir Starmer had when he tried to do these things?
Only from his own party.
Well, yes. I mean, which counts a lot. He's leading the party, this party isn't following him.
I guess what I'm getting at is there are things that you could do that would be really controversial, like property taxation, wealth taxation, increasing the rate of capital gains tax, so people who have assets pay the same as people who have jobs. And Rachel Reeves, so far at least, has ducked all that and instead decided that the best way to claw back some cash is by cutting disabled people's benefits. But I don't think that's courage. I don't think that's politically bold or politically brave. I think it's politically cowardly.
Right. And I see where you're coming from, and yes, I would support a wealth tax. But I'm not sure why he chose this area to focus on. I think that
because they thought it would be easier than some of the kind of more, shall we say, radical proposals that have been put. They thought, we'll just take some money from disabled people. That's fine. I genuinely think that's why.
You really think that's why they did it?
I think it was seen as a quick, easy option. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I hear.
Do you think I'm wrong?
It doesn't seem to have been easy, unless you seriously misjudged how easy it was going to be.
They did. I think they really misjudged the level, just like they did with those fuel payments. I think they were really taken aback by the backlash that they faced.
I mean, that's even more shocking. Why didn't he learn from the winter fuel allowance?
Absolutely right. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but does it raise a question about competence? I don't know who's to blame here. I don't know Downing Street, Treasury, Miss Kendall, or all the above. But it has to. I mean, Aggie was telling us that one minister said to her tonight, there has to be a post-mortem, and there does. This does raise some pretty big questions for the government about how it's managing things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Does it change your view of them?
They're just so much better than any alternative that I feel I have to support them because there's nobody else.
But that doesn't mean you have to be thrilled by the way they're going about things.
No.
And you're not. I can hear something. But I take your point.
The points you raised really made me think.
Well, likewise. Appreciate the call. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you this morning. That's what this show's for. That's what we're about. Making each other think. Thank you, Simon. And is Keir Starmer trying to do the right thing? Is he a decent man? Yes and yes, in my view. I do believe that. But I think he's got this one badly, badly wrong. Because you tell me what you think, but for me, any decision, any move that is going to push 150,000 people into poverty, many of them vulnerable, many of them sick and disabled, is never the right thing. And you shouldn't need your own backbenchers to point that out to you, because respectfully, it should be blindingly obvious, shouldn't it? 10:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Now, the government wants to launch a review of parental leave to offer better support for working families and to help children get the best start in life. Here with more details is Jonathan Reynolds, who's Secretary of State for Business and Trade. What currently is the provision for fathers?
Statutory, a couple of weeks. I mean, obviously some workplaces contractually will have additional support to that, but we have a system which is not hugely generous.
How much do you get a week?
Oh, if you get the statutory, Nick, my youngest is 10, so I'm not actually sure what the statutory is.
This is a very important piece of work, as you said right at the top. Mr. Reynolds, shouldn't you know what it is?
I should, to be honest.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio, on Global Player, and the new LBC app.
Do you like the sound of work that has plenty of giggles? Where you'll build lifelong skills, as well as wobbly towers? Where you'll feel part of a team, or even have the chance to lead one? Where every little thing you do makes a big difference. Do something big. Work with small children. Search early years careers to find out more.
Car owners, you could be owed thousands in compensation. If you bought a car on finance from 2007 onwards, it may have been sold with hidden commissions. Text CLAIM to 86688. My Claim Group. Authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. You don't need to use a CMC. You can claim direct to your lender and the Financial Ombudsman for free. Text CLAIM to 86688.
Claims made simple. Have you heard? About what? About Boots Opticians' ultimate eye test with Optimap scan. Why are you whispering? I think it's for VIPs. It's an in-depth look into your eye that can detect health conditions that other eye scans might miss. You know the whole family's already had one done. Okay, I'll book one now. Why are you still whispering? Can't seem to stop.
Ask about Optimap at Boots Opticians and see what's possible with the UK's favourite opticians. Selected stores charges applied based on Google review data. Contact marketing@boots-opticians.co.uk for details.
A Thameslink train is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep. For a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
When you're smiling. Banning dental group clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with Ben Kentish.
10:49 the time. Quick look at what tomorrow's newspaper front pages make of the welfare cut debacle, as I think it's very fair to call it. The Telegraph, Starmer's benefits bill turns to farce. The Guardian, welfare bill passes as bruised Prime Minister backtracks to avert Labour rebellion. The Daily Express, now it's utter capitulation over PM's welfare bill. Financial Times, same story. Starmer guts welfare reform to avert defeat in the House of Commons. Different story on the front page of the Daily Mail. The smashing the gangs latest, as they call it, the 20,000 coming across the channel on small boats this year and counting on the front page of tomorrow's Mail. The I newspaper returns to the rebellion. Labour rebels force Starmer to retreat on benefits cuts again amid chaos in the Commons. And the Metro looks at knife crime. A teenager said he was scared to go to school days before he was fatally stabbed with a hunting knife in a row with another pupil. Harvey Wilgoose telling his dad, "I'm scared to go to school." Another heartbreaking story about the knife crime epidemic that we've got in this country. 10:50 is the time. Coming up after 11, I want to talk to you about another government announcement today. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, says he wants NHS doctors to be British, and we all might have to pay a little bit more to make that happen. Do you care about the nationality of the doctor treating you? And do you worry that this is just more pandering to the far right? We'll talk more about after 11. First, though, PJ is in Manchester to talk more about the welfare cuts. PJ.
Hi there. I'm so angry. Where is the Labour government that I voted for? They're acting like a Tory austerity government. I have hidden disabilities and I'm on PIP and I've been assessed for lower capability for work. My doctor says that I am not fit to work. It took me to be sectioned to prove how unwell I can get when I'm in work. And under the reforms, because I haven't scored that 4 points, I could have lost £1,300 a month. How is that fair? I don't understand what they want me to do. And it's caused me so much stress and intense worry that it's made me ill even further. It doesn't make any sense. What did all this achieve? What did all my pain and suffering achieve?
And now you just don't know whether you will qualify because they've kicked this further and further down the road.
Exactly.
So the fear and the uncertainty continues for you, PJ.
Yeah, it does.
I'm so sorry.
I thought I'd have some answers today, and I don't. As you say, it's been kicked down into the long grass. I'm grateful that it seems that the disabled community will have some sort of input now. I would rather medical professionals and the community have input than MPs that don't understand what this life is like and how hard you have to fight. A lot of people think, oh, it's easy to get on PIP, you just fill out a form. I had to be sectioned to prove my illness. I don't understand why people think it's just so easy. It's humiliating and it makes me feel like a fraud.
Why does it make you feel like a fraud?
Because there seems to be lots of people in this country that think a lot of people who are disabled and on PIP are just doing it so they can sit at home. And I really, really wish I could work. I love working. But when I work, I get sensory overload, I start fainting, and my other things happen. And I can't. And the government seems to think that everyone, or a lot of people that are on PIP can just go into work. And it's just not fair, it's not right.
And the idea, from what you've told me, PJ, that taking your benefits away or cutting them would somehow encourage or incentivise or help you to get a job. I mean, it's offensive nonsense, really.
I find it really offensive. Yeah. I understand where they're coming from, but it's really offensive. They think it's black and white, as simple as that. When every time I've been in a full-time job, I've done really silly things to myself that because I just can't deal with that life, and I feel like I should be able to. I'm an adult, I should be able to hold down a job like everyone else can. You're doing it, and I can't, and it's really frustrating, and it's just a punch in the face when the government just thinks it's as simple as changing the law, crossing a box, and then I'll go into work, no problem. It's not right.
What are those payments? What difference do they make to you, PJ?
It's life-changing. Since I've been getting PIP, low capability for work, and the universal credit uplift and the housing benefit uplift, it means I have my life back. I don't have to worry anymore about do I have enough money to go to the shops to buy my food. And I'm in perfect health now. Well, not perfect health, but I'm a lot healthier than I was before with all the worry and getting ill because I was working. I can actually, in some form, enjoy my life now, whereas that's been impossible for most of my life.
Well, PJ, one of the concessions that the government has made is that nobody currently receiving PIP will lose out as a result of these changes. Even if they do tighten the criteria, it's now only going to be for new people making those claims. So, look, I don't know the details of your situation, your case, but maybe that will reassure you slightly?
It reassures me slightly that my situation might be better. But somebody else that has the exact same condition as me, but they're just slightly younger than me. They won't get that, and I don't understand. If it's right for me, why is it not right for them? That makes no sense.
I have no answer to that question, PJ, and nor do a lot of Labour MPs. Why should one person who has exactly the same condition and who suffers in exactly the same way be entitled to benefits, to PIP payments, just because of the date they claimed at, whereas someone else in exactly the same position is told, I'm sorry, you can't get it because the criteria have changed? That is not fair. And yet that is exactly what the government is trying to introduce. PJ, we really wish you well. Keep in touch, really. Thank you for calling in, PJ in Manchester. Let's have a chat about all of this with Rob in Maidstone. Rob, I asked the question whether I was being too harsh on the Labour government for calling their handling of this a farce, and not many people have got in touch to say that I am being too harsh. What do you make of it?
Well, Ben, I phoned you a while back and we went through the numbers and how badly those changes were going to affect me. And sorry, it's actually quite emotional today. It's been a very emotional day. Following our phone call, I ended up back with the crisis team because the stress got so much that my mental health regressed more than it's done in a very long time. What they talked about, and I listened to Liz Kendall when she did her statement, I heard her fudge the issue about what was going to happen when they did the reassessment. Today I heard that Tim's is going to do this review and they're going to look at making sure that they get better statements for what's going to happen in the assessment. None of that actually deals with the fundamental reform that we need, which is that we have outsourced this stuff to companies who are given targets for how many people they don't give it to. The DWP doesn't see the reports from those people properly until you get to the appeal stage and a tribunal. And I don't see how anything they've said today is going to make a damn bit of difference to people like me.
What about the fact, Rob, that they have said that people like yourself, you correct me if I'm wrong, but are already receiving PIP, won't have it taken away in the way that they were initially proposing? Does that change things for you? Not really.
There's a fundamental misunderstanding there because we get reassessed every 2 years as it is. So they can say, oh, you'll keep your PIP, but you'll still go to the reassessment. And if the assessor says, no, you don't actually fulfill that, then you have to go into a matter of reconsideration. You have to go to tribunals. Tribunals at the moment are taking up to a year and a half. There are 8,900 people waiting for their tribunals. They are playing fast and loose with people's lives. Liz Kendall has on her desk the report that shows how many people have taken their own lives because of decisions by the DWP. And they still went ahead with this. And I have been a Labour supporter my entire life, and I never thought that they would go after us. And they say, well, they've done a U-turn and they've backed out. But they have now made it okay for newspapers, for phoning hosts, for people on the phone to talk about the fraud and the abuse and people with cars and people who obviously haven't looked at the figures. They don't understand the process of even getting onto PIP in the first place. And yet I have to listen to this, and I went to being seen by a pain clinic, and we have a group once a week while they're trying to help me sort out the chronic pain that's caused by the problems I have. And people are being sworn at in supermarkets. People who park their cars with a blue badge and get out and aren't using a wheelchair are being followed around shops.
Because people who claim benefits have been continually demonised. Rob, I'm so sorry. How are you now? I know you said you'd spoken to the crisis team again after our last call. How are you now?
I don't know, Ben, to be honest, because I truly believed that when Liz Kendall stood up last year and talked about what they were going to try and do, they were going to try and do something to benefit us, not to turn us into the targets. And that's the thing that's frightening me.
Rob, will you keep in touch?
I will do.
Keep us posted on how you are. Take care. Rob, thank you very, very much indeed. Always lovely to talk to you. I'm sorry that things are so tough again. Keep in touch, mate. Keep us posted. Thank you, Rob. We're going to move on to the other side of the news. Want to talk to you about another element of what the government has announced today, not in relation to welfare, but in relation to the NHS. West Street and the Health Secretary saying that he wants British jobs in health to go to British workers, in a phrase reminiscent of Gordon Brown's. But does it really matter which nationality our doctors are? Does it really matter where the person treating you at your GP or hospital comes from? And the fact that we're told today, going to have to pay more, and the NHS is going to have to pay more in order to make sure that more of our doctors are British, does that make sense to you? Or do you worry that all this talk about the nationality of our doctors is taking us down a really quite dangerous path indeed? Talk lots more about that just after this.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Prime Minister has survived a backbench rebellion to get his welfare bill past its first hurdle in Parliament. Controversial cuts to personal independence payments were changed at the last minute as a concession to unhappy MPs. They'll now be subject to a review. Gregor Poynton, Labour MP for Livingston, who voted for the bill, says the rethink isn't a sign the government lacks competence.
Well, I think that was part of the process of scrutinising from Labour backbenchers. I mean, that is our job, is to look at a bill and to go through it line by line, because changing welfare is incredibly complex and we need to get it right for people, because these are people's individual lives. So I think it's important that that process has happened. Labour backbenchers have got a better package alongside working with the government.
Labour's Rachel Maskell, who voted against the bill, claims that MPs were bullied into voting for the welfare reforms and says they are deeply distressed. Labour say the claim is unsubstantiated and they're unable to comment without any further details. Aubrey Allegretti, chief political correspondent at The Times, says the repeated backtracking is a blow for Sir Keir Starmer, who'd been counting on welfare cuts to make the books balance.
He went further and said there was a moral case for reforming the welfare system. He has staked a huge amount of political capital on being able to win this vote. The themes in the Commons today are really very embarrassing for him, and it sounds like there were lots of sullen faces in the voting lobbies.
A 28-year-old man's in court tomorrow charged with the murder of a pregnant woman in County Down. Sarah Montgomery, who was 27, died in her home in Donaghadee on Saturday. A 92-year-old man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for the rape and murder of an elderly widow almost 6 decades ago. Ryland Headley attacked Louisa Dunn in Bristol in 1967. The jury in the trial of rapper Sean Diddy Combs has retired for the day after reaching a verdict on 4 out of 5 counts. Diddy denies all allegations against him. And British #1 Jack Draper is through to the second round at Wimbledon after his opponent, Sebastian Baez, retired injured. Draper was 2 sets up at the time.
I wanted to play a bit longer, in all honesty. I was feeling like I was getting my tennis together a little bit. Obviously, there's no way to win like that, and I wish Sebastian the best of recoveries.
LBC weather, showers in the north tonight, drier elsewhere with lows ranging from 8 to 20 degrees. And the heat wave will finally break tomorrow with highs of 25. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ben Kentish.
11:04 is the time. Very, very good evening. Just joining us here on the show. Ben Kentish here with you for another couple of hours. British jobs in the NHS for British doctors is the pledge from Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, today, unveiling his 10-year plan to fix the NHS. Well, that's coming in the coming days. The government confirming that as part of, they are going to give priority for jobs in the NHS to British doctors. And I'm interested in your thoughts on whether that's something that you support, whether you think it's right that, given this is Britain and this is our British National Health Service, that British people, young Brits who are coming out of medical school, should get priority for those jobs over people from other countries. Or do you just think, actually, what we want in this country are the best people in the best jobs? regardless of where they come from. So if you've got a young Brit fresh out of medical school competing for a prestigious job in a prestigious hospital, in a prestigious department with a young trainee doctor from Germany, Nigeria, the Philippines, wherever it might be, do we not just want the best doctors in those jobs regardless of what passport they have or where they were born? There's another element of this that I think slightly changed things as well. And that is the warning today from a respected think tank called the IPPR, that this focus, this drive to prioritise Brits for jobs as doctors is possibly going to end up costing more. The IPPR says this: the wider impact on pay is unclear, but greater reliance on domestic graduates could put upwards pressure on wages. Quite why these think tank economists and the rest of them talk like that, I've got no idea. But what that translates to in English is this is probably going to cost the NHS more than continuing to recruit more doctors from other countries. It says, unlike overseas staff, UK trained doctors may be more likely to push for higher settlements over time. Again, translation, UK doctors want more money, they're not willing to work for as little as some people in other countries. So is this a good idea? Or is this perhaps just another example of pandering to an increasingly right-wing debate about immigration? Because if you go to hospital, if you're rushed to A&E, or you're referred to a specialist, or you just want to see your GP, does it really matter what accent they have, or what skin colour they have, or what passport they have? Does it matter to you if they're British or not? Whether they might be Dutch, or Swedish, or Turkish, or Moroccan, I don't know, maybe they're from Tuvalu. I don't really care, as long as they're qualified and they know what they're doing. And I would much rather be treated, I would much rather my loved ones were treated from a very highly trained doctor from Fiji than someone who was perhaps slightly less qualified from Falmouth. Wouldn't you? So I'm not quite sure what this is designed to achieve. Wes Streeting says the NHS needs to be self-sufficient. But why does it need to be self-sufficient? Do we not just want the best doctors in the NHS regardless of what country they come from? Or do you think actually this is completely the right approach? That of course we are Britain. Limited, prestigious jobs in medicine should go to Brits, or at least Brits should be prioritised. What do you think? I'm a bit dubious, but I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Whether you think perhaps I'm missing something fundamental about what the government is trying to do here, or whether you too worry that this is just a bit of a gimmick designed to pander to people who are, well, you tell me, concerned about immigration, xenophobic, maybe racist, I don't know. 0345 6060 973. Let's talk more about this. Just before I come to your comments, with Dr. Chandra Kanaganti, who's GP, National Executive Committee member of the British International Doctors Association. Chandra, good to have you with us tonight. What do you make of this announcement from Wes Streeting that British doctors, rather than international doctors, will be prioritised for jobs in the NHS? Your thoughts?
Thanks for inviting me to talk about this important topic. This is very disappointing. And 30% of NHS doctors are international medical graduates. People like me came a number of years ago and practicing in inner cities as GPs. So people mostly they want to see a doctor who has skills and knowledge, irrespective of their nationality. But this policy looks like Wes Streeting has picked up because he wants resident doctors to vote for him, vote for make sure that they don't strike again for a fair deal. So instead of increasing the training post for all doctors and support everyone, actually is supporting a policy, unfortunately, that actually is very divisive. NHS is well known to have a fair policy. But unfortunately, this is not a fair policy at all. And this is very divisive. This is actually undermining the huge contribution international medical graduates who are the backbone of the NHS have been working for many, many years. This is very disappointing indeed. Now, General Medical Council, which conducts exam for these doctors to work in NHS, 20,000 doctors appeared for this exam in the last year alone, 20,000 international medical graduates. So when we are going to have this policy, why are we bringing all these doctors who are spending huge amounts of money and time and effort to come to this country to serve NHS, and we're suddenly saying that, sorry, we're not going to give you the job, we are going to prioritize UK graduates. A job or a role should be given to somebody who has the skills and knowledge, not because of their nationality.
Other people might listen to this, Chandra, and say, well, of course the British government should be first and foremost looking after British people. And if that means that giving young Brits priority for competitive jobs over young people who've come from other countries, then that's just self-interest.
It is self-interest, but there is a solution for that. You work hard and increase in the training post. When you invited so many doctors, 20,000 doctors currently here, who will be sure that you cannot apply for these jobs. Now, my son is a UK medical graduate, is in a medical school now, and he wants to be a GP like me. I want him to get that training role and the job because of his skills and knowledge and why he wants to be GP, rather than because he's a UK citizen. And I think this is about that. People want to see their doctor because they trust in the doctor, because they think the doctors understand their problems and issues and can treat them better with care and compassion, not because of the nationality. This is a very divisive policy which goes against the ethos of NHS itself. And this is very unfortunate and a huge insult to the hundreds and thousands of the international medical graduates who serve you everywhere in general practices and hospitals across the country.
Is that how a lot of you and your colleagues will see this, Chandra, as a
number of them are so disappointed. They're actually already applying for Canada and Australia and Dubai.
Doctors are wanting to leave Britain because of this announcement.
Absolutely. I'm getting hundreds of calls the last 2-3 days saying that they're disappointed that, all this hard work, they want to come and serve the NHS, and they were told that no, somehow you're not that bad, you feel like undervalued and you are somehow lesser than other colleagues, and that's not what they want to do actually. Britain has always been a fair society, fair country, and this policy is dividing us, dividing doctors, dividing the profession, and this is not how it should be. And this is very disappointing policy. And West Reading is only pondering because he doesn't want junior doctors to strike on the important issue of fair pay deal. And he's just trying to do that, And I'm sure this government is doing a lot of U-turns when they recognize this is a bad policy, when it's challenged in the courts that you cannot do that. And
you think this might be illegal?
It could be a legal issue, and also this is about showing that you give the job to meritocracy, not because of nationality. And I'm sure actually when they recognize that there's not many doctors are there for the training post, and then you have a job crisis. I came to this crisis country because in 2001 there was a big board advertising in my city in India to come back to serve NHS. So there was advertisements like that to make people like me to come here. I'm sure when we're in the position, we'll say that I think that policy was wrong. Because NHS is always dependent on international graduates. 30% of us are here serving NHS, and we'll continue to do so. And this policy is unfortunate, undervaluing international graduates, which is very unfortunate of the Health Secretary and this government to do this.
Chandra, it seems to be one of the sort of potential consequences of what you're saying is that actually this is potentially going to lead to worse quality of care in the NHS, because the logical sort of inference of what you're telling me is that people are going to be chosen not based on their merit for the job, but based on whether or not they have a British passport. And that might mean we get worse doctors than we have now.
I'm not saying that actually. There definitely UK medical schools produce very good doctors.
No, of course. But I'm saying if there are two people for a job, and one is a better candidate and the other one is British, the British person will get the job over the better candidate.
Yeah, that is true. And can I just also remind listeners a very important issue here. Number of British citizens, UK citizens, thousands of them go to Bulgaria, other countries, Eastern European countries. They go to other countries like to study medicine. So they will be treated as the same as international graduates. So we are actually undervaluing our own British citizens as well. So there's lots of issues are there, and without even considering those issues, we are going for that. And any job, a role, should be given as per the skills, knowledge, meritocracy, and the person's genuine interest in the job, not because where they are from. And we should get the best doctors into the roles. They should be serving the people of this country. And this policy, unfortunately, doesn't allow to do so.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Chandra Kanaganti is GP National Executive Committee member of the British International Doctors Association. Tell me, is this something you support? Because there is an argument I can see that says, look, the British government looking after young British medical students first and foremost is what any good government should do. Looking after our own, sometimes people put it. There's another argument, and I think I'm more on this side of it, that says, why does it matter what country somebody treating you in the NHS comes from? Don't you just want to know that they were the best candidate for the job that they are in? If you go to hospital and you get treated by a young British doctor who has been given that job because they are British, when there was a better, higher qualified, more capable person who was French, Indian, Canadian, whatever, which doctor would you want to be treated by? I know the answer for me, and with all due respect, it isn't a young British one. So is this something you support? Do you think the government is right to be prioritising young British medical students for jobs in the NHS over foreign doctors? Or do you think this is... Well, you tell me what you think it is, because I think there is a case that this is pandering. This is pandering to xenophobia. This is pandering to anti-immigrant sentiment in a way that quite possibly is going to worsen care in the NHS and drive up the cost for the NHS as well. So I don't really know what this is designed to achieve. But you tell me what you think. 0345 6060 973. Love to hear your thoughts on this one. It's 11:16.
LBC.
I've been asked by Shredded Wheat to read out their ingredients list. Drum roll. Whole grain wheat. No, that's it. A single ingredient high fibre cereal. Shredded wheat. It simply does it. I'm telling you, that's it. Applies to shredded wheat, bite size and big biscuit only.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. HolidayParkAdviceCentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Save this summer with Lidl Plus. Get 2 for £7 on burgers, jumbo sausages and more. And get 2 for £3.50 on our plant burgers, veggie sausages and more veggie classics. Download Lidl Plus and start saving this summer today.
18 plus GB only while stocks last. Terms apply. See lidl.co.uk/LPTV. Offer ends 27th of August.
A Southern train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be. With headspace to focus on more important matters. Like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
11:18 is June in Enfield, who, for me, makes a pretty good point. Ben, it would be nice to see any doctor. I don't care where they come from. I've been waiting over a year to see a specialist, and I'm very concerned that my condition has got worse. The government is talking absolute rubbish. As long as they are qualified, why does it matter where they come from? That would be my view. But what about you? Olga is calling from Fulham this evening. Hello, Olga.
Hello. I'm one of these foreigner doctors who came. I came long time ago and been lucky enough to train in this country. And I will tell you something. The British government are 1000% correct about this. British doctors, British training are probably one of the best in the world. Foreigner doctors are not well qualified and not used for this system. And it takes years and years just to get them to the level the British doctors have. And to give the best jobs for foreigners, it's absolutely crazy. Your children can't get to medical school because it's 30 applications for one place. Your children can't get a job. And you're giving the most prestigious, the most lucrative jobs for foreigners. Foreigners should serve their foreigner country. This is my point of view on this. I have nothing against foreigners, but trust me, British graduates are better than foreigners. Maybe
But then why, Olga, why, if they are genuinely better in the way that you're describing, why aren't they getting the jobs over the foreigners?
It's not that they're not getting the jobs over foreigners. Foreigners take the jobs. I'll tell you, for example, if you're in training, you FI1 or FI2, you work so many hours that for you, for example, to get in specialty, it's exam. It's very tough exam. it's very difficult because you actually have no time to prepare yourself for exams. Foreigner doctors sit in some whatever, I don't know, Nigeria, have their time, sit on the exam and pass this exam online. And it's absolutely unfair. Passing exam doesn't mean that you're better. But it is my private point of view. I don't think that British doctors are much better trained.
I've got to just answer Prisha on that, because that is a massive generalisation. You are comparing British doctors to sort of... Well, it is, because you're talking about all foreigners. Are you really saying that British doctors are better trained than Canadian doctors, French doctors, American doctors, Australian doctors, everyone
We
else?
don't have much, we virtually have no American doctors in NHS. We don't have Canadian doctors in NHS. Majority of doctors are from developing countries where training for doctors are very poor.
But again, that slightly comes back to... I'm still not entirely sure if that is the case. If there is a doctor from another country who, in your view, and that's your opinion, is less qualified, then why are they getting the job rather than a young British doctor out of medical school?
Because they can take any job, because they're desperate for job, because for them it's a very lucrative job. And they understand that
what I'm getting at is, if say the NHS it's got a vacancy for a GP, it's got a vacancy for a junior GP. If the young British junior doctor is so much better in the way that you're describing, then why wouldn't they get that job over anybody? Why wouldn't they be given that job rather than somebody coming from?
They normally will get this job, but the point is that we have such a shortage of British doctors that they fulfill this with the foreigners, because medical school. Yes, this is an issue. They should expand the places in medical school. This is what should happen, and it's not happening. And I'll tell you more. Now the GMC taking the doctors from foreign countries without even exams, without even English exam, without even CLAP exam. They just wrap the scheme, fast scheme, they just plug it in NHS and succeed.
Olga, interesting, very interesting perspective. Thank you very much for calling in. What do you make of that? Olga says we should want to prioritise British doctors because they are in general better. I mean, it is a generalisation, but Olga says it's based on her experience and fact. So is that an argument, if Olga's right, that West Streeting is right to be saying we should prioritise Brits? Thank you, Olga. Richard's on the line in Clapham with a very squeaky line.
All right. Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to, share my point of view on this, which I feel is a very interesting topic we are discussing tonight. I think we have to get the fundamentals right. If the fundamentals, and purpose for this is about unemployment issue, tackling unemployment issue in Britain, then the policy is right and it's in the right direction. But if not, then I think that we may be getting it right, because the reason why I'm saying that is because you can't actually, bypass a Brit and give, employment to another person when, your home, doctor or medical, officer doesn't have job. So it's clear. But if we want to, minimize, I think, immigration issues and all that, then it's right, because this will even help people, because we have this issue where we understand people from, especially the developing countries, come to UK and all that for job. Whilst back home in their countries, there is, health challenges and all that. Even medical doctors are not enough.
Yes, there's an ethical question there if we are recruiting a lot of doctors from developing countries because then they don't have enough.
So if to give employment for the Brit, then it's good. At least it can also help the developing country to have their doctors and medical officers, back there to improve their health system and minimize, their health challenges. So it's right. But if not, and for any other reason, which I feel for maybe racism or discrimination, then it could be bad. So I think we need to get the fundamentals right. If the fundamentals are right and it's about employment, not specifically for the purpose of the fact that if you want to discriminate, then I think we need to, because at the end of the day, UK may have shortage in specialties. I don't think that it may have all the medical officers who will be able to handle all the medical problems over here. So definitely, in some cases, there may be a referral out of the UK. So if we have those officers here, it makes sense. But in a case that these things are not in place, then I think it's going to get. So this is just something I just wanted to chip in.
Well, I'm glad you did, Richard. Really appreciate your call. Thank you very, very much indeed. To Sheila in Pontefract this evening. How are you, Sheila?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Does it matter to you, the nationality of your doctor?
I would like to disagree with West Streeting about wanting English doctors. I am nearly 82, and if there is one person who is seriously ill in this country, and only one doctor in this world who can save them, is sky blue pink with yellow dots on. I would rather have him and save me than die.
It doesn't matter to you what country somebody's come from?
No. I have been treated by a German doctor, a French doctor, and I have had other doctors, and a Nigerian doctor, and I couldn't care less what colour their skin is. It's not their fault. It's not they are all trained just the same as English doctors. So is that...
Well, Olga was saying they're not. And I'm interested in people who've worked in the NHS. I'm interested in their thoughts on this. But Olga was saying, from her experience as a doctor, that a lot of people who do come here from other countries as clinicians aren't trained to the same standard that people are in Britain.
Well, they could be trained up by the doctors who are working in the hospital.
But isn't that an argument for recruiting more? If that's true, and I'm not saying it is, but if Olga is right, is that not an argument that we should be prioritising British doctors because, in her view, they are simply better on average?
Not necessarily. Because I found that I was treated by a German doctor in an English hospital, and he was far better than the English doctors. They hadn't time for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, goodbye. And before you get a chance to say anything.
But the government's saying, effectively, we want to, we need to look after our own people. This is not the language they were using, but the gist of what they're saying is we need to look after our own young people first, and that young British medical students are finding it really hard to get jobs, and they're really finding it really difficult to get on the track to becoming a consultant because they're missing out time and time again to people coming from overseas. The government says, look, we need to make sure that we're looking after young British doctors.
Yes,
is that unreasonable?
No, it is not unreasonable. But think of what a lot of them, well, once they are trained, where are they going? Where the money is? Australia, all such as that. So we're training them through our benefit to help us, and yet they're deserting us.
They're not deserted. They're just getting jobs that are better paid abroad.
Money, yeah.
But you can't blame them for that, can you? I don't
blame them for that.
It makes me wonder why we are not paying doctors as much as a lot of other places are.
Exactly. Yeah. We should be paying the doctors exactly the same as other countries. Same as the pensioners should be paid the same as other countries.
Would you be happy? I mean, the suggestion today that this change by West Streeting is going to lead to the NHS having to pay doctors higher wages, because generally it seems Brits demand more money to be doctors than people from overseas. That means somewhere us taxpayers, Sheila, of course, are going to have to foot the bill for that. Is that something that you'd be happy to pay for?
Yes, because I can remember.
It is?
Because of my age, I can remember that my grandma I was brought up by my grandma and granddad, because my mother died 4 days after I was born, and the other children were ongoing to relatives, and they had to pay, my auntie who took me and paid £6 a week to the doctor, because that's all she could afford.
Yes, but if we do have to pay more specifically because the NHS is prioritising British doctors, is that something that is a good use of taxpayers' money?
Not the taxpayers' money. Same as I agree with the dentist. You miss your appointment, you pay £10 for it. I agree with that. No, shit, I think that's quite a good idea. But that's a slightly different conversation for another time. Lovely to talk to you this evening. You take care of yourself. Thank you, Sheila. Dr. Russell in Greenwich in just a moment. Let's do get in touch if you've got thoughts on this. Why do you think the government is doing this? Why do you think the government is saying we are going to give young Brits priority over foreigners when it comes to jobs in the NHS? Is that just the government doing the right thing? At
acting in the national self-interest, looking after British citizens at the expense of non-British citizens? Or is it just xenophobia? And I've got to tell you, one of the things that quite struck me is they're basically setting a quote on foreign doctors. They are setting an ambition that only 1 in 10 new NHS doctors recruited will be from abroad. Quotas on foreign doctors, is that not a little bit dodgy? Is that not a bit xenophobic? Or do we really want limits on how many foreigners can work in the NHS? It takes you down a slightly disturbing path, doesn't it? Tell me what you think. 0345 6060 973. More of your calls to come on that in just a moment. Plus, good news today. The number of births in England and Wales rose last year for the first time in almost 5 years. It's being driven by men of a certain generation having more children. Tell me more about that straight off the news headlines. 11:31. Matt Hewitt.
The Prime Minister has survived a backbench rebellion to get his welfare bill past its first hurdle in Parliament. Controversial cuts to personal independence payments were changed at the last minute as a concession to unhappy MPs. They'll now be subject to a review. A 28-year-old man's in court tomorrow, charged with the murder of a pregnant woman in County Down. Sarah Montgomery, who was 27, died in her home in Donaghadee on Saturday. And the jury in the trial of rapper Sean Diddy Combs has retired for the day after reaching a verdict on 4 out of 5 counts. Diddy denies all allegations against him. LBC weather, showers in the north tonight, drier elsewhere with lows of 8, much muggier in the southeast though. And the heat wave will finally break tomorrow with highs of 25 degrees.
This is LBC.
I'd been in the family home for 30 years, but it was different. Too many rooms, too few voices. Moving to McCarthy Stone felt like a big step, but this place is full of life. I chat to someone every day. In the lounge, in the garden, even in the lift. I have my own apartment, but I'm never truly alone. I only wish I'd done it sooner.
Discover stunning retirement apartments exclusively for the over 55s. Search McCarthy Stone or call 0800 153 3055. Age restrictions and qualifying criteria apply.
You know that guy I've been seeing? Yeah. Turns out my sister's been seeing him too. Oh, really? And I heard he's been seeing Kelly at number 56. And Dave, your brother. Yep.
Specsavers opticians and audiologists own and run their stores, so your care is their business, which can make them rather popular.
I've got something to tell you. I've got half an hour with him this afternoon.
Specsavers, your care is our business. Book an appointment today.
Managing your business is a big task. To then stay on top of the numbers as well, you're only human. That's why the Intuit QuickBooks AI-powered platform supports your business growth as the #1 recommended cloud accounting software. Intuit QuickBooks. Based on a survey of 506 UK accounting professionals, verify at quickbooks.co.uk/verify.
For stunning retirement apartments to buy or rent, search McCarthy Stone or call 0800 153 3055.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
11:33 the time. Lots of calls coming in about whether the government is right to say it's going to prioritise British people for jobs in the NHS over foreigners. Talk more about that in a couple of minutes' time. First, though, we were talking, indeed this time last night pretty much on the programme, about the birth rate crisis in this country, fewer and fewer people having children and the problems it's causing. Well, some good news today off the back of that. It's been reported today that the birth rate in England and Wales has risen for the first time since 2021. But it's being driven specifically, and I think this is fascinating, by an increase in babies born to dads who are over the age of 60. A 14% increase last year in the number of babies whose dads are over 60 years old at the point that they are born. And I think, we've talked about this before, haven't we? It begs an interesting question about whether there is anything inherently wrong with having children when you are later on in life, when you are in some cases already elderly. Whether it's selfish, whether it's unfair to bring a child into the world knowing that you yourself, sadly, might not have that long left in it. Let's talk about that with Andrew Billen, feature writer at The Times, who had children himself in his late 50s and has written about this. Andrew, good to have you with us. Let's start with that finding, shall we? More over 60 men having kids has stopped the birth rate plummeting so much. What do you make of it?
Well, firstly, it's good news because we're always being told that old people like me who are heading for retirement are likely to live longer than any other generation. And without the young people going to work and paying their taxes, I mean, who's going to look after us and pay our state pensions? So that's good news. As for the contribution of men over 60, I should say that I gave birth to my first child at 49 and a second at 51 or something like that. So I was over 60, but I'm not entirely surprised, partly because people in their 60s are likely to have earned a bit of money over their careers in a way the young people's first particularly don't seem to be able to do right now. So financially it makes more sense. And the fact that we are apparently living longer means if you have a child at 60, well, you might just be standing on your own 2 feet without a stick by the time they go off to university or work.
They're still going to be relatively young on average. If you die, in line with average life expectancy, you're still going to potentially have a 20, 25-year-old child without a dad on average. Is there something a bit cruel, maybe even a bit selfish about having children at that age? Would you say?
Well, actually, we talked about this a few weeks ago on LBC. I asked my sister, who's now 15, whether she thought she'd missed anything out by me being a bit older than her friend's father. And she said it was a little bit embarrassing to say my dad in his 60s when he turned 60. She couldn't actually think of anything that she wanted to do with a dad that I hadn't managed to do.
So the answer to my question really is no. The age doesn't stop you being an active and sort of present and loving dad at that age.
No, but who knows what's going to happen. I had an editor called Donald Trelford on The Observer years ago. He started another family in his 70s, and Donald did die in his mid-80s and left 2 relatively young children.
And I think that's what makes me slightly uncomfortable about it, Andrew. It's bringing children into this world knowing that you won't be there for particularly long to help them through it, I suppose.
Well, if they're going to be 25 when these dads pass away, I can't particularly see the problem. I mean, they might even be getting the money from the will a bit early. It might help them rather more than have me pottering around.
It's a bit different to be sent. Yeah. Do you think it affects the dads? I mean, interesting your daughter couldn't think of anything that she thought that you sort of, missed out on or weren't able to do. Can you think of any things or not really?
Well, I don't want to say I'm a super dad, but I certainly knew by the time I had my children, I really, really wanted them. I'd waited for a long time. I had a bit more time, I think, because my career wasn't quite as frenetic as it had been in journalism by the time I was 50. So I think in a way I super served the children. What did they miss out on? They weren't my girls weren't very sporty, so I would have really, and not being sporty myself and being elderly, I wouldn't have fancied standing on the side of a football pitch on a wet Saturday morning, week after week, but that didn't arise.
So that wasn't something they missed out on because they weren't really going to do it anyway. And if that's the only thing that you can think of, then maybe people will say, oh, it's far too old, it's not fair on the kids. Maybe they're speaking from ignorance, really.
Well, I think there's something a bit different between 60 and 70. When you starting another family at 70, left alone in your 80s, like some rock stars and American film actors have been doing, then you really must know that you're unlikely to see that your kids pass the age of 10 in any decent shape. And I think that is selfish, and that is a bit of the me generation, the baby boomers who think they can have everything all the time. But these are not. I'm unusual. This was my first family, my first marriage, my first children. Most of these blokes at 60 plus are going to be on their second marriages at least, and starting their second families. And they're demanding them to do that, I'm sure, from rather younger women.
Andrew, thank you. Andrew Billen, feature writer at The Times, who had children in his late 40s. Get in touch if you've got thoughts on that. Anything wrong with having kids in your 60s? 03456060973 to call or WhatsApp. You can text me if you like, 84850. 20 to 12 is the time. Talk to Andrew in Peterborough about doctors and whether it matters what nationality they are in just a moment. First, a little bit of breaking news for you here on LBC. Donald Trump posting on Truth Social in the last few minutes an update on the situation in the Middle East. He says this: "My representatives had a long and productive meeting with the Israelis today on Gaza. Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions to finalise the 60-day ceasefire, during which time we will work with all parties to end the war. The Qataris and Egyptians, who have worked very hard to help bring peace, will deliver this final proposal. I hope, for the good of the Middle East, that Hamas takes this deal, because it will not get better. It will, capital letters, only get worse. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Why does he sign off his post as if he's a tannoy announcer at a station? Thank you for your attention to this matter. It's the United States President. But significant news there. Israel agreeing to the necessary conditions, according to Donald Trump, for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. Will Hamas agree to the same? We have been here before, a few weeks ago, so let's not get our hopes up too soon. But that does feel, for all people in that region, not least the poor people of Gaza, like a big step in the right direction. Keep you posted on that as and when we get more information. For now, 11:41 the time, let's talk to Andrew in Peterborough about the government's attempts and promises to prioritise British people for jobs in the NHS over foreigners. Does that sound like a good idea to you, Andrew? Evening.
Hi there. I've been listening to a debate since 11 o'clock, and the whole basis of the debate seems totally misinformed to me. It is not based on nationality, it's not based on race or colour. What they're saying, what the policy says, is that doctors should be trained through the British system. Now that senior doctor that you spoke to earlier, 5'11", he was saying that he would like his son to be prioritised. Well, if his son, as I guess he might be, is being trained in the British system, he would be prioritised. I mean, you actually mentioned earlier about only people with British passports being prioritised. That's patently not true. People go through the British system.
I said, obviously, people going through the British system are predominantly going to the British. They won't all be British.
But no, we have a lot of foreign students coming to colleges here and schools, and the basis of this discussion is British. I mean, you actually mentioned the term xenophobia earlier. You know, the basis of this discussion is British versus foreign. It's not. It's just simply people that have gone through the British training system.
Is it that? Is British versus foreign that different to British training versus foreign training? I know what you're saying. But
totally. They can be Dutch. They can be American, Australian. It's not nationality based. And we, as you know, we have many foreign students in this country, and I just want to tilt the conversation slightly, move it away from xenophobia into whether it would be right to have British trained doctors rather than foreign doctors.
Do you think it's a good idea?
I do. I don't have anything against prioritising people who've been trained in the British system.
Why?
But sorry.
Why do you think that's? Why is it better to have people trained in the British system?
As was mentioned before by a doctor earlier, the standards for each country are different, and the standards for this country are very high.
And as are the standards for other Western countries. And other countries across the world.
Indeed. And that can be debated, and it can be debated whether ours is the best standards or not. But I do want to move this away from whether you're British or Indian. The fact is, it's whether our training system is worthwhile following, not anything else.
Should it not, Andrew, just be the best person for the job regardless of where they've been trained? That's my issue. It seems to be anti-meritocratic.
No. There is an argument for that. But the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of doctors going through the training system in this country. Yep. I know that it was capped at one point by Boris Johnson for reasons that I can't even guess. But as long as we have doctors trained in this country through our system and they pass, then there's no reason why they should be overlooked.
But there is a reason. Let me give you The reason that we give to them is that they've been overlooked is because there happened to be a better candidate for the job they're applying for who had been trained in America or France.
And fine, and that might be a good thing.
But surely that person should get the job.
Well, perhaps so. I mean, the point is, the reason for my call was I've been listening to this debate for over half an hour, and it's all been based on nationality. Skin colour was mentioned, xenophobia, British passports. That's not what it's about. It's about, we should be debating whether it's, as you just mentioned with me, whether they should be trained in this country or elsewhere. That's a totally different discussion.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh no, I think it may well be an idea, but again, should we have the best person for the job? I mean, that's the question to be asked.
And that's the question I'm asked. I would rather be treated by a doctor who was deemed the best person in the world for that job, out of everybody who applied, regardless of where they applied from, than somebody who got the job purely because they'd gone to a British medical school rather than a German.
And that's a fair argument, and that can be debated. My real concern was how this conversation has gone for the past half an hour.
Understood.
And the fact that people were being misinformed as to what the policy was.
I take that on board. I think it's a very, very fair point. It's about training, not just about nationality. The fundamentals still stand to me. I don't think it changes quite as much as you think it does, but we can disagree on that. But a really interesting call. Thank you, Andrew. Grateful. Lots of your calls coming on this. More to come in just a moment. After 12, another health-related story for you. Want to talk to you about dire warnings this evening, about how many children in this country are dangerously fat, and who or what you think is to blame. The time now, 11:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Now, the government wants to launch a review of parental leave to offer better support for working families and to help children get the best start in life. Here with more details is Jonathan Reynolds, who's Secretary of State for Business and Trade. What currently is the provision for fathers?
It's statutory a couple of weeks. So I mean, obviously some workplaces contractually will have additional support to that, but we have a system which is not hugely generous.
How much do you get a week?
If you get statutory, and Nick, my youngest is 10, so I'm not actually sure what the statutory is.
This is a very important piece of work, as you said right at the top. Mr. Reynolds, shouldn't you know what it is?
I should, to be honest.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio, on Global Player, and the new LBC app.
Summertime is get-together time. And just imagine the get-togethers you could have if you win big with Lotto. Because the Lotto £15 million jackpot must be won this Saturday. Don't forget to play. Get your ticket today. Lotto from the National Lottery. Prizes rounded down to the nearest £1. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
The longer days are here, and you know what that means? It's time for the Halfords Big Summer Sale. Grab up to 50% off a great range of motoring and cycling essentials for the holidays, like car cleaning, bikes, scooters and dash cams. So whether you're hitting the road, the bike trails, or your favourite camping spot, you'll find plenty of savings to suit you. Visit your local Halfords experts in-store or shop online. Offer subject to availability, full T's and C's and exclusions apply. See halfords.com for details.
They might reorganise your shelves, help you work from home, or let you know your plants need repotting. But the real mischief's in Felix, appearing immediately when their favourite food's served. With the irresistible range of Felix food.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to recharge yourself and your phone. To stretch out, sit back, and when you hear all change please, you'll know you already have. Go with your flow with great deals at ThamesLinkRailway.com. Terms apply.
Have you heard?
About what?
About Boots Opticians' ultimate eye test with Optimap scan.
Why are you whispering?
I think it's for VIPs. It's an in-depth look into your eye that can detect health conditions that other eye scans might miss.
You know the whole family's already had one done.
Okay, I'll book one now.
Why are you still whispering?
Can't seem to stop.
Ask about Optimap at Boots Opticians and see what's possible with the UK's favourite opticians. Selected stores, charges apply based on Google review data. Contact marketing at boots-opticians.co.uk for details.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish.
11:49 the time. Back to your calls about the government plan to prioritise doctors who are British/trained in Britain over those that are coming from other countries. Is that a good idea? Is it fair? Is it something you would be happy to pay more for? because we are told today that it's probably going to cost the NHS more. And who funds the NHS? You and me. The Sally's in Watford this evening. Sally!
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Right, I think I will start from saying, yes, it's a good idea we need to train enough doctors in this country for our population. And the reason we need to do that is I have no problem with the training of foreign doctors. But there was a very famous example some years ago of doctors in Eastern Europe, which are still not rich. They may have joined the EU, but they're not rich countries, where the population was being denuded because doctors were leaving that country to come and work here. And that's really all I have to say. In the short term, yes, of course. And I have their training. I mean, I have a brilliant Czech specialist who is absolutely amazing, who goes back every year for 2 weeks to Czechoslovakia, where he was trained to work for free he's an orthopedic surgeon, to work for free on children in Czechoslovakia. Now, he is brilliant. I mean, he's best. He's absolutely amazing. He's an amazing orthopedic surgeon. And he works in this country. And these doctors, they have families. You know, they want to do the best for their families, so they will come to this country. In the short term, we have to let them in. But unless every country in the world trains enough for its own population, once that's happened, then they can go wherever they want.
So your worry, Sally, is about the impact it's having on other countries?
Yes, absolutely.
But it's our government's responsibility, is it not, to focus on looking after British people and making sure that we are this, even if that does mean potentially that other countries miss out?
No. I'm saying in the short term, we've got to let them in because we have to need them. But once we have trained enough and got them, it's a 6-year thing. You know, it's not going to happen overnight.
What happens even if we have enough? If they say there's a job available as a junior cardiologist, to take an example, and a young person who's just qualified from a London medical school or a British medical school applies for it, as does somebody who's more qualified who comes from, to take your example, the Czech Republic. Who should get the job? Because under West Streeting's plan, as I understand it.
I'm sorry, what I'm saying is, I'm sorry.
No, I hear what you're saying, but under the government...
None of this matters, because once, it doesn't matter, because once we have trained enough for our own population, all the doctors in the world can go wherever they like. Our doctors can go to Australia, Czech doctors can come here.
So
Once that's happened, but it's going to take a long time.
But Sally, so I think you're telling me that this idea that we should be prioritising British trained doctors over people coming from abroad.
No, I'm not saying that.
It's not a good idea.
No, I'm not saying that.
So, but do you think it's a good idea?
What I'm saying is...
No, I hear what you're saying. I hear your point on that completely. I agree with you. But on the prioritisation of British doctors...
In the short term.
Yes.
I've already said in the short term, of course.
What, we should prioritise British doctors?
No. In the short term, we shouldn't. Okay. But we have to look at the impact this is having. This has had, will have on other countries.
Sally, appreciate the call. Thank you very, very much for picking up the phone this evening. Saul's on the line in Tottenham. How are you doing, Saul?
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm not quite sure why this has turned to xenophobia. I understand your position on the debate.
I'm not saying it is xenophobic, but language about we will prioritise Brits over people coming from abroad.
But who said that?
Well, that's what the government is planning to do.
No. Who said that? I've only heard you say that. Sorry.
Well, it's reported in multiple newspapers that is part of it.
I haven't read that either.
When you look in the Times, you look in the Telegraph, you look across the board, it's widely reported that is what the government is going to do. And when it's that widely reported, that's because the government has said it.
No, this is what I understand, right?
Yeah.
And it's a win-win, okay? Is that simply... It's a win-win because if you've been in the NHS for a number of years, they're going to provide training opportunities, and training takes money and time. instead of going for the easy option of not having to spend the money on training and getting someone in. And that's prevalent in all UK industries now, especially after Brexit and COVID. Companies and everyone's having to spend more money on training people from here instead of opting for the cheap option, which is just to get someone from abroad. So it's a win-win. So all that's happening is that as a sweetener to stop these strikes and everything like this, it's like, well, look, if you stay in the NHS for a long period of time and don't go, we are going to give you the training opportunities to progress onto a speciality, which might take 4 or 5 years. So the doctors here, they stay in the country for another 5 to 10 years.
So it's
hang
not,
on, wait.
It's not just.
No,
it's not just.
no,
it's not.
No,
just,
it is just that.
It's not just. That's all you just told me. You hadn't read the story. So
I have read. No, listen. I open my tax bill at the end of the year, and I get £2,000 national insurance, right? So I'm thinking, where's that money going? Okay, so I opened my paycheck the other day. Now, if people, they're not going to leave the NHS if there's training opportunities to stay in it.
You're slightly missing part of what the government is doing. What the government wants to do, reportedly, is to make a commitment that no more than 1 in 10 doctors hired by the NHS will come from overseas. And I don't really understand why it matters where they come from. I just want the best doctors in the NHS.
But hang on, you're always going to get the best doctor because the doctor that treats you is going to be trained to do the job.
But not if that commitment is quite firm and is quite binding, and there are 2 doctors going for the same job, and the hospital says, well, actually, we've already got 1 in 10 of our staff coming from abroad, so we'll have to hire the British one instead, even though they're not as good. I think that's a disaster.
Who said they're not as good? Someone is trained to do the job. They're trained to do the job.
So I'm talking about a hypothetical scenario where there are 2 doctors going for the same job. One is from overseas and is more qualified and is a higher calibre of candidate than the young British one. Under the government proposals, quite possibly, the people hiring for that role would pick the worst doctor purely because they've been trained in Britain.
So who on earth, where have you got this hypothetical situation? If you get treated by someone in the NHS for a condition, for whatever it is, that person is trained. So what's going to happen is that the trusts are told, right, we are going to have a quota, but we are also going to provide you more money to train the people up who have been. It's a win-win. It's a win-win politically because people then are looking after the country. It's a win-win because we keep our doctors.
It's not a win-win if we get worse doctors.
Who says we're going to get worse doctors?
It's not who says. It's possible that if you are focusing on someone's nationality or where they've done their training rather than just whether they are the best candidate for the job, then you end up hiring people on factors that aren't purely their merit or their capability or their talent or how suitable they are for that role. And when it comes to something as important as medicine, that worries me. Thanks for the call, Salt. Let's squeeze in Andy in Birmingham before we move on. Hello, Andy.
Hello there, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Andy. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Good. Talk to me about this. Source says it's a win-win, it's a no-brainer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should actually prioritise the English doctors, the junior doctors, because we've already subsidised them through university, probably a couple of years of training to get them to where they are, to then just turn around and say, well, there's no job for you, and then go off and do something else is a waste of money, surely.
Yeah, fair point. But is that not money that we should be willing to basically say goodbye to if it means that somebody else gets a job who is better for it?
Who's to say which doctor is better? It's subjective.
Well, it is.
You wouldn't get a senior going for a junior doctor's job.
No, but you might get a junior doctor from abroad who was deemed to be more qualified than the junior doctor applying from Britain.
I prefer the doctor from Britain because, say, there's a subtle language difference. Although a foreign doctor will be able to speak English adequately, but say between doctors or between doctors and nurses, there's some miscommunication or accident which leads to, a poor health outcome.
And languages, I think it's totally fair, Andy, to say that language skills are important for a job like medicine. But assuming that someone has absolutely adequate English for the role, if they are the better doctor, even if they're coming from Poland or China, shouldn't they get the job over the young British doctor? Look, I think I'm probably in the minority opinion on that one, which is absolutely fine. Won't be the first time. Thank you for your calls. We're going to move on after the news. We're going to talk about obesity. Child obesity in this country is at frightening levels. What do you think is to blame? Who do you think is to blame?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at midnight, the Prime Minister has survived a backbench rebellion to get his welfare bill past its first hurdle in Parliament. Controversial cuts to personal independence payments, or PIP, were suspended at the last minute to win back unhappy MPs. The Conservative Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Helen Whately, was clear what she thought as the debates came to an end.
It was a rushed and chaotic compromise that would harm disabled people, create a two-tier benefit system and barely make a dent in the overall welfare bill. How could anyone justify voting for something that would not make a single disabled person's life better?
Labour's Rachel Maskell told LBC that MPs were bullied into voting for the bill and they are deeply distressed. That claim, says Labour, is unsubstantiated, so they can't comment further. Labour's Rosie Wrighting backs the bill and hopes a review of PIP will offer disabled people reassurance.
We're going to hold a review, the Timms review, that is co-opted with disabled people, so their voices at the heart of it. What we voted for was a package to support people into employment.
In the last half hour, Donald Trump has said Israel has agreed to the conditions to finalise a 60-day ceasefire, during which time the US will work with all parties to end the war in Gaza. The American president says he hopes Hamas takes the deal because it will not get better. A 28-year-old man's in court later, charged with the murder of a pregnant woman in County Down. Sarah Montgomery, who was 27, died in her home in Donaghadee on Saturday. A report ordered by the last governments found universities have failed to stop some of their academics with gender-critical views being harassed. It says free speech has come under attack as a result. LBC's Tom Harrigan reports.
Back in March, Sussex University was fined for the way it handled the case of Professor Kathleen Stock, who quit her job there after being accused of transphobia for suggesting gender identity isn't always more important than biological sex. Now, this report's found lecturers have faced sustained campaigns of intimidation for having similar opinions. It wants uni bosses to acknowledge any bullying and take appropriate action. Ministers have already promised stronger powers to protect free speech on campuses.
LBC weather. A cloudy night for Scotland and eastern England. Dry elsewhere, but muggy in and around London. A risk of heavy rain in eastern parts of the UK for Wednesday. Sunny spells elsewhere and feeling fresher. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ben Kentish.
12:04 is the time. Ben Kentish here on LBC. Very good morning indeed. Wednesday morning, if you just joined me here on the programme. The level of obese children in this country is at alarming levels. Confirmation of that today from a group of academics who are calling for urgent action to prevent unhealthy lifestyles setting in amongst babies and toddlers. And I think this finding, this warning from these experts, is particularly interesting because we know this is a problem, don't we? You only have to have opened your ears at any point in the last few years to know that we have got a serious issue in Britain, a serious problem when it comes to the proportion of children that are overweight or obese. And I'll give you the figures in a moment. But what these scientists are saying today is this is not a problem that emerges late in childhood. It's not that suddenly teenagers who are stick thin are piling on the pounds. They are saying that from their research, a child's issues and struggles with weight start early in life and appear, this is their words, appear difficult to alter after the age of about 5 years. So really what we are talking about here is an obesity epidemic amongst Britain's over fives. And they're talking about the first 1,000 days of life, which is what, about the 3 or 4 years or so. From, actually, not even that, I've got that wrong, my maths is terrible. From pregnancy through to a child's second birthday are critical to development and health across the life course. So we are talking here about young children. We are talking about children who have not yet reached the age of 5, and in some cases are miles off doing so, who are already becoming really, really unhealthy and dangerously overweight. The figures are genuinely frightening. 22% of 10 and 11-year-olds in this country are now not just overweight but obese. That's more than 1 in 5. In this country, 1.3 million children are obese. A further 2.3 are overweight. That's 3.5 million children are overweight or obese. And what I'm kind of interested with you, given we are talking here about very, very young children, what I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Al, is who's to blame for this? What's to blame, partly, but also who is to blame? Is it fair to lay this at the door of the government and say not enough is being done to, I don't know, reopen youth centres or get kids out playing, not enough is being done to help people improve their diets? Is it really about government policies and funding and all the rest of it? Or when we are talking here about young children being given food, and it would be given because not many under 5s are feeding themselves, that is making them dangerously fat, let's be blunt, dangerously fat, is this a problem of parenting more than it's a problem of politics? And if it's not the government or it's not parents that are to blame, who is responsible for this? Because we talk about this a lot. We know it's a problem. We know it's a crisis. We know it's costing the NHS billions. We know it's going to lead to all sorts of health problems for those children. And yet, it seems to me we haven't really got to the bottom of who is actually responsible for sorting this out. There's a sort of shifting of responsibility. Parents say, oh, it's not my fault, I'm busy, the government needs to do this. The government says, oh, we can't act, parents need to take more responsibility. Schools say this is a problem, but it's not on us, everybody else needs to fix it. Who is to blame and who is responsible for fixing this, in your view? When we've got a nation where getting on for a quarter of children by the age 11 are clinically obese, who has to carry the can for that? Who has to take responsibility? And what is to blame? Who and what is to blame for this problem, and who needs to take responsibility, in your view, for fixing it? What needs to change to start to reverse these alarming levels, as they've been called today, of childhood obesity? Give me a ring if you've got thoughts on that. Maybe you've got experience. Maybe you yourself struggled with your weight when you were younger. Maybe you're a parent who's got thoughts on this. Maybe you work in weight loss or you work in the health sector. Let me know where you are on who is responsible for this problem that is getting worse, it seems. 0345 606 0973. Pick up the phone this morning. Give me a ring. Interested in your thoughts on this one. Let's talk, just before I come to calls, to Professor Paul Gately, Chief Executive of Obesity UK and More Life, Professor of Exercise and Obesity at Leeds Beckett University. Good to have you with us this morning, Professor. Let's start with these warnings about childhood obesity reaching alarming levels. We've known this is a problem, as I say, for some time. Am I right to think this problem is getting worse, not better?
Yeah, the problem is getting worse. I mean, we've been talking about this for 20 years, and it is fair to say there's been little action over the 20-year period. There's lots of talk, lots of policies, but those policies are put into place, and there's been very little action and investment in trying to address child obesity. And what we've seen is a gradual increase. And what's worrying is we've seen an increase in those more deprived communities. So those families that face more challenges, financial, social, mental health challenges, they're the ones that we're seeing significant increases.
We'll talk about what's to blame in just a moment, but I want to ask you quite bluntly, Paul, who do you think is to blame? Who bears responsibility for what is a national crisis?
Well, the way I view this is the collective responsibility. You know, we often point the finger at parents, but parents don't control school food, they don't control marketing, advertising, they don't control investment in different types of health, they don't control that much of the investment for sports goes into sporty kids. So the top 5%, where the rest of and the other 95% of children don't get the support. PE in schools has disappeared over the last 10 years. And so, yes, parents have a responsibility, but teachers have responsibility, food companies have responsibility, marketing and advertising companies, and the government really are the ones that will be bearing the brunt for the whole of society. It will be our NHS and our government that are paying for lack of action on obesity.
And a lot of the things you touched on there obviously come back to policy decisions, and they come back to funding, and they come back to government, consecutive government. What's the role of personal responsibility in all this, Paul, though? Because we can't lay all the blame at politicians' doors.
No, I think in my explanation there, believe parents have some accountability. Children have some accountability.
Do children for their own weight? I mean, I would say that parents are the ones that ultimately are responsible for keeping their kids healthy.
But as I've said, school food policy, school physical education, the physical education that I got or was delivered 15 years ago is nowhere near what it is now. All those opportunities that children had to have access to a variety of things are no longer there. Now, they're not parents' responsibility unless you want to classify that as just them who they elected. But fundamentally, it's a collective responsibility, and it's actually unhelpful. Many parents that we work with, and I work with an organisation called More Life, and when we work with parents, they are desperate to do something about the issue, but there are so many challenges for them to fight against, and that's really where food companies, TV companies, media companies, advertisers, marketing, and the government should have shared responsibility.
Do you think this is a problem that we're still... I mean, the figures are staggering. 22% of 10 and 11-year-olds are obese. I mean, that should make everybody pause for thought. And I just wonder, Paul, if you feel that we're still not taking this as seriously as we should be.
Well, I used to talk about 150,000 children having a weight that if they were adults would make them immediately eligible for surgery. I used to say that 15 to 20 years ago. The figure is now 450,000 children who would be eligible for surgery if they were adults. It is frightening, and it demonstrates a real lack of leadership and a lack of action. And I've worked in the area of obesity for the last 30 years. What I can tell you is in the last 10 to 15 years, we have ignored the needs of children and their families, and that's got to be held at a governmental level.
What's your sort of suspicion? What's your theory on why that is? Because you're outlining a case, and it's a case that is very powerful, and I suspect to a lot of people won't come as much of a surprise in terms of what needs to change. And you're also saying that politician after politician, government after government have ducked making those changes. But what's your sense of why that is?
Well, the sense of why that is simply because of the fact that they've looked for short-term gains. And really, if you want to address health budgets in the next 3 to 5 years, childhood obesity is not the place to go. But if you want a thriving economy in the next 25 to 30 years, then childhood obesity is absolutely the place to go. So governments have to shift their mindset from short-termism, which is what we've faced for a long time, to a long-term vision. And really, unless our politicians take responsibility for our long-term health of our population and the long-term health of our economy, and not just make short-term decisions, then we will have this problem with childhood obesity continuing until they really take a longer-term view.
And in the meantime, what would you like to see parents, families, schools maybe doing more of to sort of mitigate some of the damage that we're seeing?
So a couple of things that, I work and lead an organisation called Obesity UK, which is a charity. We have lots of support groups on our website that families can sign up to, where they'll get tips. There'll be other parents they can talk to. There's children and people's groups as well, though, where they can get support and advice and help. That would be a first part. The second part is to talk to, teachers at school that they feel familiar with and that they want to receive some help from. And then the final thing for families is to do more things as a family, because what we know is when we talk to parents, they think somebody else is better equipped to help them, when actually what the children tell us is their parents are very capable of helping them. They just need that support and confidence as a family to be collectively more active and to try and work together to have a healthier diet. So at multiple levels there can be support.
Paul, thank you very much indeed for coming on and talking to us this morning. Professor Paul Gately, Chief Executive of Obesity UK and More Life, Professor of Exercise and Obesity at Leeds Beckett University. So 2 questions for you this hour, really. Who do you think has got to do things better? Who do you think has got to take responsibility for the fact that the numbers of children are obese, as Paul was just describing? 22% of 10 and 11-year-olds in Britain are now clinically obese. I mean, that is scary, isn't it? Who's responsible for that fact? And what is it that you think needs to change? What is it that needs to change to stop so many children getting so fat? Is it on parents? Is it not good enough for us to keep saying, oh, well, it's not parents. Parents are busy. Parents are stressed. Parents have difficult, responsibilities at the moment. It can't be... Ultimately, it's your job as a parent to keep your child safe, isn't it? And I would say that includes making sure they have a good diet and aren't getting dangerously fat. So I do think, and people sort of get annoyed when I say this, but frankly, I do think it is almost a form of cruelty or a form of neglect, often well-intentioned, or often absolutely coming from a place of love. But it ain't doing the children any favours. And I mean, yes, of course, there are things that politicians should be doing. I think Wes Streeting this week coming out and saying supermarkets need to be doing more is all well and good. But ultimately, if a child is dangerously overweight, is it not the parents that are ultimately responsible? Give me a call this morning if you've got thoughts on who is responsible and what you think needs to change to stop so many children getting to that point in the first place. That number once more, 0345 6060 973. Come to your thoughts on that straight after this, 12:17.
This is LBC.
When we're little, we don't overthink things. We're brave, confident, we laugh and ask questions. And play. So why stop there? Just because we're adults, it shouldn't mean we stop trying new things. For me, starting a career in early years has meant not just a new job, but new skills, new friends. Like me? Yes, and a new sense of purpose. All that, and I can earn while I learn.
Yay, painting next.
Do something big. Work with small children. Search early years careers to find out more.
Have you heard?
About what?
About Boots Opticians' ultimate eye test with Optimap scan.
Why are you whispering?
I think it's for VIPs. It's an in-depth look into your eye that can detect health conditions that other eye scans might miss.
You know the whole family's already had one done.
Okay, I'll book one now.
Why are you still whispering?
Can't seem to stop.
Ask about Optimap at Boots Opticians and see what's possible with the UK's favourite opticians. Selected stores, charges applied based on Google review data. Contact marketing at boots-opticians.co.uk for details.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 12:18. If you are the teacher that's just got in touch by text, I won't name you because you asked me not to, but if you know who you are, if you would be able to pick up the phone and let me know your perspective on this, I would really love to hear it. I know you say you can't give your real name, but that's fine, you don't have to. But really interested to hear from you if you're the teacher that's talking to me about PE. If not, I'll read out your message a little bit later. Let me come to your calls on what you think is going so wrong and who you think is responsible for the child obesity crisis that we are warned today has reached alarming levels. Let's talk to John in Woodford. What's going on, John? Hi.
Well, it's easy, isn't it, what's going on? You know what's going on. We know what goes on and we know what is done about it. How do we stop people going through windscreens with a car crash?
You make them wear seatbelts.
Hang on a minute, isn't that a bit of an nanny state?
So what needs to change in terms of...
We need the government to be behind obesity and to stop children eating too much. Well, if we stop them not wearing seatbelts, we stop people smoking around children. What's the difference?
Because the government can't mandate what a parent is feeding their kids.
Hang on, they mandated that we should not let kids go in the car without a seatbelt and we shouldn't smoke around kids.
All right, so how would this work?
Well, just quite easy. You just do the same. You would make sure, firstly, that companies do not sell food with so much sugar and salt. It's not really, it's not hard, is it? I mean, they've got to go to the shop to buy something. If they grow stuff in their back garden, it's not good for them. It's going to be difficult.
But John, what you're saying, and it's a lot of people support it, and I do too. But what we're basically saying is that we've got to a point where the government needs to intervene to protect children from the decisions of their own parents.
Well, what else? What are you saying?
Well, the alternative is parents stop buying their children so much rubbish food in the first place.
No, make sure the food in the first place isn't there. The same as make sure that cars are not produced without seatbelts. Come on, why are we making such a big thing?
Because it's perverse to me to say the responsibility for making sure children eat healthily is on politicians rather than on that child's parents?
Well, actually, not all politicians, because a lot of parents are very good with making their children eat
But
healthy.
that's the point. A lot of parents do manage it. So
What are you going to do with those children that haven't got that sort of same parenting because the government has not had proper schooling, because we haven't got the money to get proper schooling? If we can't teach parents to do things properly, then we have to do it ourselves. But I don't know what the big fuss is about. Why is this all this worry about nanny state? We want children to grow up healthy. We want them to grow up intelligent. Let's give them good schools, good food, and let's make sure they get it, and let's make a law about it. And by the way, let's make sure they're going to be there. That's why we don't allow them in cars without
all right, so what would the law say? What would it be illegal to do with this new law?
No, it's not up to the parents. This is up to what they buy.
Yeah, no, but John, you just said we need to pass a law. What is the law? What is the law? What does it need to say, do you think?
You need to say to companies, do not put this amount of sugar in, do not put this amount of salt in.
And what about parents?
Well, they won't have to worry because the food given to them won't be...
so we ban sugar?
Yes, absolutely.
We ban all sugar, John. You're being so respectful.
Well,
you can't ban sugar.
We ban children driving in cars without seatbelts. We ban children around...
So we ban chocolate, do we?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We got to listen.
We ban chocolate.
No, we don't ban chocolate. We make sure the chocolate is healthy. There are dark chocolates that are very good for you.
Right, so we ban milk chocolate.
We could actually meter it out a bit, and so that children get a certain amount.
This is some sort of authoritarian dystopia.
Why not? If it brings that
you
good
genuinely want the government to ban milk chocolate?
Well, let me tell you something. Can I say something else here?
Go on.
Do you mind? At the moment, we're going through hell, let's be honest, with the health service and mental illness. It's because the government has allowed the internet to bring on so many terrible things for kids. I mean, everywhere I go, kids on phones now.
Yes.
I go around to my grandparents, my grandparents, not my guy. I go around to my grandchild, and she's sitting there. She expects to have the... What are we doing? When are we going to take charge? When are we going to take this country back again?
But I don't think I agree with you. But I think, as our professor was telling us, this is on all of us. This is a societal problem. This is a parental problem. We cannot expect politicians to ban anything that's unhealthy, John.
When you go out tonight and you go and park your car somewhere, is that okay, or will you get fined?
What?
You've accepted that. You've accepted now. You've really been towed into line. You're constantly towed into line. You're not
being serious. You're not.
I am being serious.
So because we have parking restrictions, that means we should ban chocolate?
No, not parking restrictions. We allowed parking to become a source of making money.
But you're not, John. I've got opinion on it. Are you seriously suggesting that the government should ban sweet foods?
No, listen, I think we should put control on it, and if the government can do that and they've got a way, then they should. Listen, do you realise? Now, let me go back to your childhood. Did the person next door look after you, or was there another child, a friend of yours that looked after you? No, it was your parents. Now, the government, in a sense, is the father of the country at the moment, because he's in charge, he's got the person.
You're taking away all personal responsibility.
And why not?
Why not? Because I think that's pretty authoritarian. I don't think it's for the government to mandate by law what parents should feed their children.
No, you're quite right. So you're absolutely right. I'm completely wrong.
That's quite frightening.
Yeah, you're right. Let's stop this nonsense. Let parents do what they want. Let's open up stores that just sell food that's got too much fat, too much sugar, too much oil.
But there's a middle.
Let the children grow up to be unhealthy in their body as well as they are in their mind at the moment.
There's a middle ground between there's a middle ground between normal. John, let me speak. There's a middle ground between letting parents feed their kids whatever they want and banning chocolate. You must see that there is somewhere between those two things. Because I agree with you. I think perhaps we have been too lax on parents who don't take enough. Don't show enough regard for their child's health. I do think perhaps we need to be a bit of tough love here. If your child is dangerously fat, then there is a case. I think that is a failure of parenting. government to mandate through law what parents are and aren't allowed to feed their kids. Responsibility has to come in here. It has to come in the same way as parents are expected to clothe their children and keep them warm and keep them safe and give them a roof over their head and give them the basics they need to survive and thrive. A healthy diet should also be part of it. I really do think there needs to be a bit more kind of stick approach here. Thank you, John, but I don't think banning chocolate is the way to. Imagine the political consequences. Any government that comes out and says, right, vote for us, we're banning chocolate. They're going to do well at the election, aren't they? Thanks, John. Let's talk to Lucy in Swansea. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Ben.
How are you this morning?
Oh, a bit tired now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you picked up the phone and talked to me. We won't keep you too long, Lucy. But talk to me about your perspective on this.
Just going back from a school perspective, really, when our 2 lessons of PE have been cut in order to get standards that should be in with the app, because that is all what we measured against. And, so we come back from COVID, I've decided on having freewheeling Fridays or whatever days you would do it on, Wheelie Wednesday, where they would bring scooters in, bikes, and turn down yard into a track that they could all use, not class by class. And it's all been stopped, and it's really sad, because I think this is what children need, really.
Who's put a stop to it?
Our new head teacher put a stop to it.
On the grounds that it's taking time away from maths and English and stuff that quote unquote really matters.
Yeah, the subject.
What a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah.
So and is this primary school, Lucy, or secondary school?
Primary school, and it's really sad because the children don't have playing time. They don't play outside because it's not safe for them to play outside. They can't play in school because they've got to be doing work. And I just think it's really sad. It's a very sad way to go. Children learn so much through play, and they're so successful. You know, the children just die and they spend 45 minutes cycling around or scooting around. We had scooters as well in schools. We used to lend those.
I bet they loved it, and of course it's good for them as well.
Yeah, but it was classed as when you're not teaching. Even though we would put tracks and like obstacle courses and cones, and we would be monitoring it, we wasn't teaching, so it wasn't part of what we could do.
And why let them eat at lunchtime at all, Lucy? Just give them another maths lesson. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? The idea that children, the only way that schools should be sort of educating kids is through direct education, rather than letting them be children, and letting them express themselves, and letting them exercise and so on. So how many hours a week are they doing anything that resembles physical education or physical activity?
Probably 1 hour.
A week?
I mean, yeah, but they teach less than that. I mean, they get their play time, they lunchtime play, but yeah, outside.
So, just to be really clear, we've now got a country where 22% of year 6s are obese, and it's the same country where those same year 6s in the curriculum only have to do 1 hour of physical activity a week.
Yeah, in our school. It is.
It's crazy, Lucy.
It is.
And you've tried to change, good on you, and you and your colleagues were trying to fix it, and they said teachers come in and said, nah, don't do that, don't want those kids exercising, let them get fatter and fatter as long as they can do simultaneous equations.
I think we've had quite a few changes of head teachers, and I think it goes to show just how much the teaching staff are like the whim of the head teacher, because whatever the head teacher wants, they're going to get. So even though the staff are saying this is what the children need, it doesn't matter. We have no voice like that at all.
And it comes from government, I think, doesn't it? It comes from the fact that politicians have been kind of cracking down and down and down on the non-academic elements of the school day, and then asking and stopping, going, oh, hold on, why suddenly are all these children putting on so much weight? And then they haven't sort of clocked for a moment that this attack on PE and activity is part of it.
Yeah, and at some point somebody will put like 2 and 2 together and realise that they've come up with 5 and it should be 4 really. Yeah. But until then I don't think anything is going to change.
It winds me up so much, Lucy, and it's a great call. Thank you very much indeed for ringing in. I think it should be an hour a day. I genuinely, hand on heart, think that kids should, as part of the curriculum, be doing an hour of physical activity every single day. They're children, they need to. They're not meant to sit and stare at a whiteboard for hour after hour when they're 5 years old. They need to be moving, they need to be running around, and it's good for their health, and it helps them focus on the rest of their studies. It's nuts the way we are ramming maths, English, geography, history, all the rest of it down their throats, while forcing kids to sit still for hour after hour after hour, and then wondering why so many of them are so overweight. Nuts. Thank you, Lucy. Really, really appreciate the call. Still to come tonight.
Those is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Will that be there? Not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid.
If you thought the Trump-Musk feud was over, you were, it seems, severely mistaken. The United States president now today talking about potentially looking to deport Elon Musk. Details to come. News headlines first. Matt Hewitt.
Government welfare reforms have cleared their first hurdle in Parliament, but they've been radically scaled back. Cuts to payments disabled people get to help live their daily lives will be delayed and reviewed. It leaves the Chancellor with a headache, as most of the savings she was hoping for won't materialise. US President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed terms for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. He's warning Hamas to accept the deal before things get worse. And Matt Hancock's back before the COVID inquiry today, facing questions about the government's plans to protect the care sector during the pandemic. Thousands died after people were discharged to care homes, often without being tested for the illness first, to free up hospital beds. LBC weather, a cloudy night for Scotland and eastern England, dry elsewhere but muggy in the southeast. A risk of heavy rain in eastern parts on Wednesday, sunny spells elsewhere, highs of 25.
This is LBC.
Do you like the sound of work that has plenty of giggles? Where you'll build lifelong skills, as well as wobbly towers? Where you'll feel part of a team, or even have the chance to lead one? Where every little thing you do makes a big difference. Do something big. Work with small children. Search early years careers to find out more.
Feel the thunder of hooves, the tension as they race past, your heart in your chest, that split second of silence. Before the roar of the finish, that glorious Goodwood feeling. Qatar Goodwood Festival, presented by Visit Qatar, July 29th to August 2nd. Book now.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics, with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
12:34, here's Ash on WhatsApp. Ben, an hour a day of PE. I used to dread doing games. I think it's cruel for those who hate it, because some of us always will. Maybe something gentler could be taught instead of those awful team sports. Yeah, absolutely, Ash. It doesn't have to be cross-country or rugby or whatever. As long as those kids are moving and they're not sitting in a chair rooted to their tables and their desks, I don't mind if it's dance or Pilates or aerobics. I don't care what they're doing, or just running around the playground playing it. As long as they're moving and they're active and they're ideally outdoors, I'm happy. But
so what it is when they're with her, she's got a kind of different set of rules. Then when they're with me, they've got a kind of different set of rules. So for when it comes to their diet and everything, and I think across the nation, obviously in society, we do have a lot more breakdown of, relationships and, marriages. And I think that this is actually part of the thing that is feeding into our children.
What's the link between a marriage breaking down and a child getting fat?
Well, if I've got a child at my house, right, and I'll give them a treat today, right? They go back to their mum's house that same day, their mum might not be aware that they've had a treat, right, or they've had that, and then they just get another one. And children will basically go for what they want. They're not really thinking about their long-term health. They're not thinking about the sugar. They're not thinking about. It's us adults that have to be around them and have to say, look, this is you've had enough. That is how much you have. They might cry, they might whatever, but you have to just lead them to it. You have to be like, well, that is a portion for your size, and that is it. And it is the adults that are around it. You can't blame a 5-year-old for their weight. I don't even think you can even blame someone who's maybe 14. So they get 14, 15, 16.
And I don't think you can blame the government either. You can to an extent. There are things the government could have done or should have done. But ultimately, disagree with what?
The government definitely, they could do more. Reason being, for example, in schools, right, when I was at school, there was, I'm 42, so I grew up in the 90s and stuff like that. We did so much sport in school, and it was part of school.
I'm not saying the government has
people coming in.
I'm not saying the government has no responsibility. I think it doesn't, particularly when it comes to what we're talking about in terms of the lack of PE at school. But I think if a child is dangerously overweight, the primary responsibility for fixing that is with that child's parent, is my view. And it's almost become a bit of a contentious thing to say, but I think that's my view.
No, I do agree with that. I fully agree with that. But I also do think that we do need to then provide everything there is for these parents to do that. For example, I'm just coming back to swimming because it's one of my main things what I do, and I take my children swimming a lot. I live in the borough of Havering, right? And in Havering, I think during the holidays, it's actually free to take your kids swimming. Like, so you can, if you've got a child that lives in Havering, you can take your child to the swimming pool for free. So during the summer holidays, when I go to the swimming pool and I take my kids and I don't see many people there, or I think, where is everyone? I think, what is everyone doing? This is free. You know, people can get, maybe they don't know about it. Maybe I think that they have to like...
They don't all need to be taking their kids swimming. They just need to not be giving their kids as many chocolate bars and burgers and packets of crisps and chicken nuggets and the rest of it. It really, I mean, it is that simple. Most of this is about diet. Of course, exercise is part of it. Of course, that helps. But really, what we've got here is a crisis of children being fed too much food that is incredibly bad for them. And again, I think that has to come down to parenting, doesn't it? Thank you, I always lovely to talk to you. Let's talk to Michael in Stamford-le-Hope. Michael, hi.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning. Do you know what? I've kind of disagree with the very last sentence you just said about the diet being the most important thing. I mean, I myself, last summer, was 22 stone. I've not changed my diet at all. I've kind of cut out a little bit of bread. But I now walk 50 miles a week. I'm sure I walk 50 miles at least every week.
50 miles a week?
16 stone.
Wow, that's amazing.
Do you know what? It's really not. It's really, really not.
I think it is 50 miles a week.
Do you know what? It sounds like a lot, but it's not. When you take into account the steps you do in your everyday life, and then you just have a little bit of exercise on top, it's not hard to do it.
Not many of us are walking 7 miles a day. Good on you. I think that's impressive.
Do you know what? They recommend 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
You get up to 16,000, 17,000.
How many of us are doing 16,000 steps a day?
Do you know what? I mean, like I say, the main point, I was driving for a living and was very, very inactive.
Right.
And like I say, to be honest, my fiance's attractive. I was looking at myself in the mirror last summer thinking, why am I fishing with? And I just got up and started walking. I was like, shit, I'm going to Chinese takeaway. I go to work, I do 5 rounds a week, 4 12-hour shifts a week. I eat a 10-inch pizza every day. Every day.
And you're still doing that?
Yeah, I still do that.
But you've shed 6 stone.
I'm still losing weight today, and I eat 10-inch pizza every day that I go to work. 4 days a week I go to work, I eat 10-inch pizza.
Because all the walking is cancelling it out?
I do 50 miles a week. If my fiance does a wonderful Sunday dinner, I will not go and sit down and eat one mouthful if I have not walked 50 miles that week. Starting on Monday morning when I wake up until I have my Sunday dinner on the Sunday afternoon, I will not sit down and eat that dinner until I've got 50 miles. So on Saturday morning, I look back at what I've done that week, and I make sure between that Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon when I've got dinner, I've hit that 50.
So Michael, I think it's amazing. I know you're sort of reluctant to take the compliment, but honestly, I think it's really, really amazing. So what's the lesson there from your experience when it comes to children?
The point I want to make with that is
useful insights. Everything I need to make confident decisions starts with AI analysis. Wait, what? AI analysis. AI analysis. Trade smarter with innovative features and expert insights. Yep, all in one app. eToro. Join today. Not investment advice. eToro is a multi-asset investment platform. The value of your investments may go up or down. Your capital is at risk.
Managing your business is a big task. To then stay on top of the numbers as well, you're only human. That's why the Intuit QuickBooks AI-powered platform supports your business growth as the #1 recommended cloud accounting software. Intuit QuickBooks. Based on a survey of 506 UK accounting professionals. Verify at quickbooks.co.uk/verify.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish.
12:49 is the time. More of your thoughts on obesity, kids. Why are so many of them so overweight? In just a moment. First, though, 12:49 the time. If you thought the feud between Donald Trump and Elon Musk had blown over after they seemed to kiss and make up, not literally, oh God, that's that thought, wasn't it? A few weeks ago, you would, I'm afraid, be wrong. Because it seems to have exploded once again today. Donald Trump saying he is looking at deporting Elon Musk from the United States. Shannon Felton-Spence joins us, politics communication strategist at Harvard University's think tank, the Belfer Centre. Shannon, good to have you on the LBC this morning. Very good morning to you. What has prompted this latest outbreak of verbal war between two of the world's most powerful men?
So basically what has happened is that Elon has been publicly and voraciously criticizing Trump's big, beautiful budget bill, saying that it is going to add trillions to the national debt, and that is something that he cannot tolerate. And so this is the same cause of the fallout several weeks ago, but what has changed today is that the Senate actually passed that bill today with the vice president stepping in a constitutional role that the vice president holds to tie break because the vote was 50-50. So it looks like the big, beautiful bill is going forward. And so Musk got vocal again. So these two are, feuding in public and airing their dirty laundry. And once again, all the world is glued to Truth Social and Twitter X.
And this threat from Donald Trump, asked about the prospect of deporting Elon Musk, I think we'll have to take a look. I mean, is it a realistic prospect that Elon Musk, the world's richest man, might be kicked out of the country that he's come to call home?
So I think that this is where Trump sort of pulls out the big guns, so to speak. So, Elon Musk is very famously an immigrant from South Africa, and Donald Trump, obviously, probably one of his most politically viable and popular policies has to do with immigrants in the United States. However, Elon Musk is also the richest man in the world, but this is Donald Trump pulling rank on Elon Musk in a very, very big way. So you've got two of the most powerful men in the world, but one is saying, I actually have the ammo that you don't have. I have an army. I can deport you. And so it really is Donald Trump just pulling rank and trying to embarrass Elon Musk.
It's pulling rank, Shannon. I would also put it to you that it's basically fascism to threaten to deport people because they are speaking out against you.
Listen, I mean, that probably goes without saying. Donald Trump, but he makes policy from his Truth Social, but this is not one that I don't think we have to take this one seriously. I mean, the truth of the matter is that Elon Musk was a very big reason why Donald Trump got elected. He put millions and millions and millions into PAC that spent on Donald Trump's campaign. He got very creative with campaign spending, and not only on the Trump campaign directly, but also in the congressional races, which ended up winning back the House and the Senate for the Republicans. So, Elon Musk also wields a big sword politically. But, he, like I said, he doesn't have an army and he can't deport Donald Trump. But he's going to do everything he can as well.
He is, and that makes me wonder, Shannon, whether this feud is just going to rumble on and on and on and get deeper and deeper and deeper and more bitter. And it makes me wonder if and how it's going to end.
Well, it's just going to get more and more embarrassing, right? I mean, it already got pretty embarrassing 2 weeks ago when Elon Musk threw out his big gun, which was he said that the president was in the Epstein files, and that's why the full Epstein files hadn't been replaced. He, has since walked that back. But, the truth of the matter is that Donald Trump, can take away this EV mandate and can sort of review Elon Musk's government contracts, which have made him the richest man in the world. I did think it was sort of funny when he said that Doge should investigate Elon Musk and save the American people many, many billions of dollars. I thought that was sort of like, straight out of Dr. Frankenstein or something.
Shannon, thank you very much indeed. Shannon Felton-Spence, politics communications strategist at Harvard University's think tank, the Belfer Centre. Box office stuff, that, isn't it? Absolutely box office. Popcorn-worthy. Feuding between two of the world's most powerful men. Long way to continue for entertainment. 12:54 the time. This comes in from Chris, which I think is bang on the money. Ben, there's a lot of hysteria and paranoia about it being unsafe for children to play outside. One of your previous callers even said kids can't go outside because it's unsafe. It's parents with that attitude that, far from being kind to their children, are actually depriving them of fun and healthy activity, as well as projecting their own paranoia into their children. It's a vicious circle. This attitude needs to be challenged more. Chris, I couldn't have put that better. Well said, sir. The world is actually safer for children to play than it was 50 years ago, and yet that is not the approach that other people take, and that is something I think we need to talk about. Thanks, Chris. Dave's calling this morning from Harrow to carry on a conversation about what's responsible and who's responsible for the fact, Dave, that so many kids, 22% of 11-year-olds now clinically obese. It's terrifying, isn't it? It's frightening. Morning.
Well, yeah, hi Ben. Thanks for talking about this tonight, and I was going to say, the flip side of that is that there's people, hopefully, who aren't, and I just fear that, especially the government were also talking about, the wider thing was actually talking about targeting food producers, imposing calorie restrictions on food in the shops and all of this. And I was just thinking about this today, and I thought, you know what, it actually discriminates in a rather dangerous way against people who actually do lead healthy lives, and do want to sort of get exercise, because there's a really invidious part of this that I don't know how many people know. I certainly didn't know this. I've got to accept that if you don't have enough calories and you're burning up, your calories are basically fuel, what happens is your body will start to actually zap its own fat. So the flip side of it is that there are going to be people who don't realise that if they're not having enough calories and they are using those calories, they will turn into there is a particular diet. There is a ketosis diet which deliberately attempts to, sort of eat body fat, and that's probably what the obese people, that's what this is trying to target. But the fact is, it's going to hit other people, who end up being effectively like anorexic without realising it.
Why punish the majority just because some people are feeding their children too much unhealthy stuff?
Yeah, exactly. It's the kid, the lessons, or they're not having a physical activity. They're all going to school by car, so they're just basically couch potatoes from the moment they get up in the morning to when they go to sleep.
So John's proposal for the government to ban chocolate, Dave, you're not on board with that this morning?
Well, this is unbelievable. Chocolate actually, chocolate has got some benefits. It's quite a lot of benefits from the cocoa and that, is antioxidants, I think.
It's about moderation, isn't it? A burger here and there has never done a child any harm. It's when kids are getting this junk food every meal, every day, that it becomes a problem.
I think there's a problem. This is it, and it is those particular kids, and it's such a blunt instrument to target which is going to hit everybody.
This comes in from Kevin. Let me just put this to you, David, if you could. Ben, there are 4 million children living in poverty. It's a lot higher than most comparable countries. It's down to the government. If you were not so fortunate, you wouldn't be putting the blame on parents. You would look at society and inequality and the massive wealth gap. So has Kevin got a point there? Is this about poverty? Are we being too harsh on parents who are just doing their best, maybe?
Well, they're crazy. I've never quite got this argument because the fact is, to eat all these bad things isn't cheap. You're talking about fast food out there, 7-8 quid for a chicken or coated in. So I've never quite got the poor argument, because if you want to eat healthy, it ain't expensive. You go buy cauliflower, carrots, it's pennies from the supermarket.
Just a bag of wholemeal pasta and some sauce and a bit of
get to buy some spuds, cook them up.
Bag of spinach or something. It's not a lot of money. Dave, I hear you. Thank you. I've got to leave it there. Just want to read this out just before we move on. Something that's interesting. Caroline in Hertfordshire, the thing the government could do to tackle this is stop all fast food adverts, stop fish and chip shops and chicken shops being built near schools. That's how this starts, which again, I think is a very fair point. I'm out of time for tonight. That went quickly, didn't it? Thank you for your company as always. Lovely to have you with us here on LBC this time in the morning. I will be back with you, as always, 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Lots, I'm sure, for us to discuss then. Don't forget you'll find today's show on the Global Player and the brand new LBC app. We've also read a new opinion piece from Nadine Dorries. You'll stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion. Put your news categories in the order that you want. Pause and rewind live radio and listen to a range of podcasts. You can get that now for free from your app store. Thanks again for your company this morning. Coming up at 4 on LBC, Ian Payne. First, right now, Richard Spur.
Morning. Still to come, the Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe's called once again for the death penalty to be reinstated in Britain, having said earlier this year that the Southport killer should have received it. I'll be asking what you think about Mr Lowe's, some might say, extreme view. But first, after a huge dilution of cuts to both universal credit and personal independence allowance, the government's welfare bill has passed its first hurdle, winning a vote in the Commons. Now, that last-minute U-turn has left many MPs wondering what they were even voting for, and even more, questioning whether Chancellor Rachel Reeves is going to claw back that just about £2.5 billion sum that the changes to that bill will cost. So this morning I'd like to hear your views. And is this latest climb down a sign that Keir Starmer's lost his authority over the Labour Party and also over the country?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 1 o'clock, the Prime Minister suffered his biggest backbench rebellion since taking office last July. 49 Labour MPs voted against the government's welfare reforms, which did manage to pass on to the next stage. That's after a major last-minute concession on when changes to eligibility for personal independence payments would take effect, just hours before the vote. One of the rebels, Paula Barker, was highly critical.
Whilst grateful for the concessions, this has further laid bare the incoherent and shambolic nature of this process. It is the most unedifying spectacle that I have ever seen.
The Tories say the government should shelve the bill. The Resolution Foundation says the concessions mean there'll be no net savings from the reforms by 2030. But the Work and Pension Secretary, Liz Kendall, says the rebellion hasn't damaged Sir Keir Starmer's authority.
I think people are 100% behind a Prime Minister who secured the first Labour government in 14 years. There are definitely lessons to learn from this process. I certainly will do that.
Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to the conditions to finalise a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. The American president says he hopes Hamas takes the deal because it will not get better. Our US correspondent Kate Fisher has been reading his post on his social media platform.
He's essentially saying this is the best and final deal, but Hamas have not responded to this, and we have been here before when the Americans have put out a deal that they say Israel is backing, but Hamas has not come to the table. We also haven't had any public response to this posting from Israel either.
The jury in the trial of rapper Sean Diddy Combs has retired for the day after reaching a verdict on 4 out of 5 counts. Jemania Rodriguez hosts the Daily Mail podcast, The Trial of Diddy.
It was a bombshell moment today. The jury has only been deliberating for about 12 hours when they sent a note to the judge said that they had come to a decision on 4 out of the 5 counts. And their note said there were unpersuadable jurors among them regarding the first charge, which is the most serious racketeering conspiracy.
The judge has told the jury to keep trying for a verdict on that charge. Diddy denies all the allegations against him. LBC weather, a cloudy night for Scotland and eastern England. Dry elsewhere, but muggy in the southeast. A risk of heavy rain in eastern parts on Wednesday. Sunny spells elsewhere. Highs of 25. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Richard Spur.
Good morning. The government has won a vote on its benefits bill by 75, but only after offering huge last-minute concessions to Labour rebels. Ministers had already watered down their plans, once by reversing some cuts to universal credit and protecting some of the current claimants of personal independence payments from stricter eligibility rules. But some Labour MPs are still concerned, either what they're voting for and where the money, which has been eaten up by these changes, will now come from. Let's hear the moment the vote came in.
The ayes to the right, 335. The noes to the left, 260.
Well, the Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall made her case for why this bill is vital for the government.
Members opposite left us with a system that incentivises people to define themselves as incapable of work just to be able to afford to live. They then wrote people off without any help or support and then blamed them to grab a cheap headline. The result is 2.8 million people out of work due to long-term sickness. And 1 in 8 of all our young people not in education, employment or training, with all the terrible long-term consequences this brings for their future job prospects, earnings and health. And the number of people on disability benefits set to more than double this decade, with awards for personal independence payments increasing at twice the rate of increases in the prevalence of disabled people in our society, adding 1,000 new PIP awards a day. That's the equivalent of adding a city the size of Leicester every single year. I do not believe that this is sustainable if we want a welfare state that protects people who most need our help for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing compassionate about leaving millions of people who could work without the help they need to build a better life. There's no route to equality or social justice when 9 million of our fellow citizens are out of work and not looking at work for work, and when our country has one of the widest disability employment gaps in Europe. And there is no responsibility in leaving our system of social security to continue as it is and risk support for it becoming so frayed that it is no longer there to provide a safety net for those who can never work and who most need our help and support.
And the Labour MP for York Central, Rachel Maskell, told LBC's political correspondent Aggie Chambray about why she voted against the bill.
Well, I voted against the legislation today because I was representing my constituents, but also disabled people across the country. They've had no voice in these processes, and to know that 150,000 people would be pushed into poverty is a step way too far for me. The Labour Party was created to keep people from poverty and to ensure that disabled people had real agency, and I don't think the legislation served those purposes today, so I couldn't support that. That crossed a line for me. But I think ultimately today has been an extraordinary day in Parliament. We saw a bill disintegrating before our eyes, but also we heard a very powerful debate, I think, where many cases were made about constituents' own experience around what it is like to live in a very ableist world. And we need to really reflect on the kind of society we are when disabled people can't even have a voice in their own future. After this vote, however, I am really concerned about disabled people because they will be anxious, because I think all of us are quite confused at various points in the day as to what's happening and where we are, and that clarity is really needed for them now.
Rachel Maskell there. Well, it's a huge last-minute U-turn right up until 24 hours before the vote. Many ministers were saying it's a good bill. I've spoken to MPs. They're happy with it. That clearly wasn't the case. A big last-minute dilution. I'd love to hear your views about that, particularly when it comes to what won't now happen to universal credit and PIP. Also, the roughly £2.5 billion that was part of the £5 billion saving that Rachel Reeves had promised, which she's now going to have to find from somewhere else, potentially taxes, who knows. And more broadly, perhaps, when it comes to Keir Starmer as the figurehead not just of the Labour Party but of the country, do you think this almost rabbit in the headlights volte-face at the last minute has eroded his authority? the leader of this country. Call me now, 0345 6060973. WhatsApp, the same number, or text 84850. And before I go to your calls and messages, I'd like to bring in Ellen Clifford, who is a disability rights activist and member of Disabled People Against Cuts. Ellen, many thanks for taking the time. Your reaction then to today's vote. Good morning.
Well, we're just horrified at what went on in Parliament today and how the bill is just in tatters. It's been the product of a complete shambles from start to finish. We're actually still confused, and we know that several MPs are still confused as to whether, for example, the universal credit cut for new claimants, whether that still stands or whether that is going to be part of the Tim's review. If everything that was in the bill is now going to be subject to this review before it comes in, then we're not really sure what the point of the bill is anyway, because you could just conduct a review in so-called co-production with disabled people without having needed the bill in the first place. But I think the fact that the government was prepared to introduce legislation that would have pushed hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of disabled people into poverty, and the way they did it, the way in which they did it with sleight of hand, so they basically misused and abused figures to try and minimise the numbers that were being reported to MPs that would be pushed into poverty. There was also a whole raft of information which really we consider essential for MPs to know before they voted, such as the employment outcomes, because the whole bill, of course, has been predicated on this idea that by cutting benefits it will move disabled people into work, but the employment outcomes weren't going to be published until October. There was no information about the extra cost to the economy from the additional pressures on mental health services, social care services, homelessness services, and also the way the government kept down the numbers that they said would end up with a cut. They said it would only be 800,000 out of 1.5 million to be affected by the cut. They said that would be the result of additional appeals and mandatory reconsiderations. Well, that would be a lot of extra appeals, which the average cost of an appeal is now up to over £1,000, and none of that has been factored into the figures either. It just seemed that there was a lot of information that was missing, and they were just trying to push it through Parliament with MPs not really understanding what it was about, and that's deeply concerning for us, that a government would be prepared to do all of that to essentially get away with pushing so many of us into complete destitution. I suppose we're concerned that Starmer is still in power as a person who'd be prepared to do that to us.
You go so far as to say that. I mean, in a sense, then, for you, Ellen, and for your colleagues and for your supporters, there's a double loss of respect in the government, because not only would they have done this, could they have felt that they could have got away with it, but then they've U-turned on a policy which they were holding up as a bit of a flagship move. It's almost a double whammy against them for people in your position.
Absolutely. And for all of us, we've also been campaigning against the terminally ill adults bill at the same time. A lot of disabled people are very, very concerned about that, because far from what the proponents of the bill, including Starmer, have said, it would affect disabled people, because of course disabled people get terminally ill as well. But we were excluded from that debate completely. We were gaslit for our concerns, and our concerns were that people who are struggling through lack of social care, through lack of suitable homes, would then opt to end their lives prematurely, not because they wanted to, but because public services are failing them, and our concerns were ignored all the way through. But we've been fighting very hard on both those fronts, at the same time as obviously managing our lives as disabled people and all the barriers that we face day to day. We just feel it's been cruel, and it's been the first year of a Labour government that people hope might bring improvements for us.
When you, as an activist for disability rights, have been lobbying the government and explaining the sort of concerns that you've just told me, I'm not going to get excuses, but what are the answers or the justifications that you're getting from ministers about why they're going to do this, and why disabled people aren't going to be put into poverty in the way that you described?
It's been quite interesting, because obviously Stephen Timms used to be the chair of the Work and Pension Select Committee, so we know that he knows all of this inside out. He's been very awkward. He hasn't been answering questions properly. He's been evading them, and he's been starting to say the things that he used to accuse ministers before under the previous government of saying and being disingenuous in saying them. He knows full well that PIP, for example, is not an out-of-work disability benefit, that it's not means tested, and that actually a lot of disabled people who are on PIP, we couldn't carry on in work if it was taken away from us. Yet he's coming out with the same rhetoric the previous government did, and I don't know if some of the new MPs don't understand the difference between the different benefits, and obviously new MPs in the social security system is very complex, or whether it's willful ignorance on the part of some of those who've been going along with this idea that by cutting PIP, more disabled people would move into employment, when the opposite is going to be true.
I think one of the very problems is that it is so complex. You know, I've heard listeners to this show saying that there are endless scores of pages that have to be filled in, and, you know, you almost need a diploma to be able to circumnavigate the form. Is there no extent, though, Ellen, to which you are relieved that the government, purely in practical terms, relieved that the government has made this U-turn?
There is relief, but there's also mistrust about what they might be planning as their next steps, I suppose. There is relief, but I don't think we're going to be fully relieved.
And just fine.
Whilst was in power, to be honest, just because of the cruelty that has gone on. I suppose, yes, there is relief, but again, we don't actually know. And a lot of MPs weren't clear about the remit of the TIMS review and what is in it and what is still standing from the bill. And we just don't think anyone should vote for something if they don't fully understand it. That shouldn't be how legislation is conducted. So I think we're just quite concerned and perplexed at the moment.
And finally, would you have faith or be prepared to have respect and have trust again in a Labour government of the current composition, but that wasn't led by Keir Starmer? Is he for you the problem?
He seems to actually have a personal grudge against disabled people. I know that he had difficulties growing up in terms of being embarrassed by his disabled members of his family, according to biographies anyway. It felt very personal that we've been under such attack from the outset of his premiership. I think if, someone else was in charge, then, and there was a radical change in direction of policy, then maybe a learning to trust again. But I think disabled people are feeling extremely bruised, and it will be a long time before people forget.
Ellen Clifford, many thanks for taking the time. That was Ellen, the disability rights activist and member of Disabled People Against Cuts. Well, now it's your chance to have your say here at LBC on 0345 606 097. There's a lot to discuss. It's a big U-turn. It doesn't just affect PIP. You may well wish to talk about that. Universal credit and other areas of welfare too. It's not looking good for the Prime Minister. The ministers are being ferried out already to put on a brave face and say, look, you know, we just listened to our party and this is still a very viable bill. But you've got MPs on both sides of the House now saying, I don't quite know what I voted for or voted against, and where is the money now going to come from? Which is clearly going to have to be swept to one side from Rachel Reeves' original plans in order to pay for the concessions that they've made. We'll talk more in a few moments' time.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
So we don't know how many, and we don't know the cost.
Straight to the point.
Tell you what they're laughing at, those two. They're laughing at the law, and we're letting them.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Inexcusable, shambolic failure.
Listen on Global Player or the new LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
When we're little, we don't overthink things. We're brave, confident, we laugh and ask questions. And play. So why stop there? Just because we're adults, it shouldn't mean we stop trying new things. For me, starting a career in early years has meant not just a new job, but new skills, new friends.
Like me?
Yes, and a new sense of purpose. All that, and I can earn while I learn.
Yay, painting!
Do something big. Work with small children. Search early years careers to find out more.
At Halfords, we want you to say yes to packing more into summer days with a great value roof box or bike rack. Say yes to freewheeling fun with bikes and gear for all the family. Say yes.
The spirit of what Labour is about.
I think this This is a massive surprise for many people because traditionally Labour has always been the champion of the underdog is a rather silly word, but certainly what we perhaps used to call working classes, people who didn't perhaps have the opportunities in life. And I remember vividly Keir Starmer talking maybe about 2 or 3 months, I think it was, before the election, about this class ceiling. He made a huge point, I forget where he was speaking, but this huge point about allowing people to break through the class ceiling. A lot of those pre-election promises seem to have fallen by the wayside pretty quickly, don't they?
All rhetoric, I'm afraid, because when it comes down to it here, as one of your previous very learned colleagues said just a moment ago, this was a conflation of unemployment benefit and living with disability benefit. They're completely separate things. Having the DLA stroke PIP has nothing to do with your ability to work. It's the added cost of having a disability. That is all it is. So this nonsense that Liz Kendall, and she should fall on her sword today as well it starts, because she's just as bad. She doesn't get it at all, that woman. So disgusting in her attitude that she was just going on today as if it was somehow a financial thing that it's stopping people from working. DLA stroke, it was never about working, Richard, never. It was the additional cost of having a disability.
It's true that when we hear the government talk about benefits often, the same is true of the phrasing of this bill, that PIP and universal credit almost seem to go hand in hand, and as you quite rightly point out, universal credit is for people that are generally for people who are able-bodied but can't find work, whereas PIP is for people who require attendance.
A disability, yes.
They do. You heard there, though, from Ellen, who is a disability rights activist. Yeah, I thought she was extremely articulate. I thought she brought that point very well. What she's saying is that Keir Starmer has more or less marginalised disabled communities across Britain, that they can't see a Labour government that will bring a fair deal to the disabled without him at its head. I mean, it strikes me that you would agree with that, not just on disability, but also on a range of other issues.
I would, but I fear that it's more than just replacing the head of the serpent with another one. We need to get some spiritual, moral basis to this. The conflation of finance and disability it's just, they just don't go together. You can't conflate these things, and this is what they're doing. They're trying to make it, we'll make $5 billion of cost. Meanwhile, there's almost like a genocide of disabled people who are committing suicide tonight, worrying about are they going to be able to eat or even just get out of the house for the rest of their lives. They don't have an alternative. They can't do a Norman Tebbit and get on their bike because they haven't got any bloody legs. I will never forget that comment by Norman Tebbit, which I think resounded around the nation for years afterwards, and we're still talking about it now. You mentioned that you feel Angela Rayner is a more human, more humane individual, and you could conceive of the party with her at its head. But if you write off, you talked about the Labour Party being a serpent. If you write off that serpent, can I ask you, what is the alternative politically in the country at the moment to replace it? None. They're all heads of the hydra, aren't they? Party politics is a cancer on society. We need to start over. We need something fresh. Parliament and sovereignty has been stolen from us all. We need to start over. Get rid of party politics. It's a cancer.
All right, Delroy, many thanks for that. Message here on WhatsApp says, should the Labour Party be forced to return their wages and expenses to taxpayers? They do not have a clue on how to run the country. Bring back Corbyn. 0345 6060 973. John's in Hull. Morning, John.
Hey up, Richard.
Hey up, John. Your views on this vote?
Well, that guy said most of them, apart from the fact that it's an absolute showing up and the tail wagging the dog. But he also said a very interesting point. You was away last week, weren't you?
I was, unfortunately, yes.
Well, a lady rang up while you was up, because I had to listen to the other guys, and she said what he's just said, that what used to be disability living allowance, which turned into this PIP, was only for it's this disabled word. I think I said it to you a long time ago, Richard. What's disability and what's a condition? You can have a condition, but it doesn't mean you're disabled. And I think they've got the wires crossed, and there's far too many people who can get around and maybe even do a bit of work. They're getting this, and so it's giving them. Did you see what the point I'm making? What's the difference between a condition? I'm not denying you can have a condition, but does it mean you're disabled?
I think that isn't just a semantic argument. I think it's important to define what we mean when we talk about the disabled community. But on the point of PIP and how complex the allowances have been, and I think Ellen said that too, the various allowances that are available, as I understand it, if you're disabled, are complex and different and difficult and nuanced, and often it can be quite hard to know what to apply for, and you can fall in between the slats depending on your condition, stroke disability. But many people say the same of universal credit. They say that it was far better when we simply had, we had job seekers allowance, and in days when we had what we called unemployment benefit, and that universal credit oversimplified the system, so many people lost out. I think the same is true, and others may wish to comment, on disability allowances.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, the main thing, I'm losing the will to live. They're now telling supermarkets not to sell stuff that makes you fat, and they're putting more money while you was away, they're putting billions into areas where people who don't look after themselves with bad lifestyles. I mean, at the end of the day, we're becoming a nanny state, and it's getting beyond me. But just to finish, to me, you've got job seekers if you're looking for work, you've got universal credit if you can't work, and if you need assistance, carers, or getting about, you can get this extra top-up. That's the three levels, and all you do is you just say, can you get about? Are you having to pay someone to do your shopping, to do care? And if the answer's no, you go on the middle one and you get by, but you don't get by as well as the ones who's, there's plenty of them in the pub all day, and I'm sorry, I've got a pretty close man on this, Rich. And apart from that, it's not saving it. They're not saving anything now. But even if they did save it over 4 years, when you look at what the country owes, it's peanuts, Richard.
But just literally, you raised the question of money, and if you don't mind, there is one further question, which is a massive part of this discussion. Rachel Reeves is going to now have to find a further £2.5 billion of savings. We had the spring statement of £2.5 billion of savings in autumn because of this U-turn. So it's a very expensive U-turn for the government. Remember Theresa May, who said there's no magic money tree? Well, Rachel Reeves seems to have found at least a magic money sapling. Where's she going to get that £2.5 billion from if it isn't from taxing us in some other capacity?
Well, you're talking to somebody who's going to have to, people who've done well like me, which we've discussed many times. She's going to tighten lots of things for people who've got assets. Otherwise, she has to borrow, and there's no other way around it. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. I can't be doing with it anymore. I'm fed up.
John, I shall let you go and lick your wounds. 0345 6060 973. It was quite a remarkable thing to watch that result. And from what I understand from people who are in the chamber, really quite a palpable feeling of tension, with some Labour MPs saying, well, I was loyal to the government. I did vote for this bill. I did vote for what I was whipped to vote for. But, I don't really now know what I'm voting for, because the measures have been watered down so much to appease rebel Labour MPs that it doesn't really seem to be any sort of a bill, or certainly doesn't represent the bill that it started out to be. And the other worries, of course, is that Labour's popularity is going to sink when Rachel Reeves inevitably has to try and make up that extra £2.5 billion from bringing in extra, or indeed taxing people who perhaps